So I would like to now call council meeting number 14 for Tuesday, May 21 to order. And I'd just like to say right at the outset that we have regrets from Councillors Elliott and Goulet. We recognize that we meet on the traditional territory of the LHTAKO DENE Nation. I would now like to get a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Moved Councillor Vic, seconded Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Now I would like to get a motion to adopt the regular council meeting minutes of April 30th, 2024. Please. Councillor McKelvey, Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Next, we'd like to introduce Matt Mason. Oh, pardon me. We don't have any presentations, but we do have delegations, and that is Fortis BC, Matt Mason, Community and Indigenous Relations Manager, and Bryan Johnston, Regional Engineer from Fortis BC. So if you gentlemen would like to come up and take a seat there and make sure that you've activated the microphone and the floor is yours. And just so you know, we do have your PowerPoint presentation on screen and also on paper or electronically in front of us.
Ria just had to step out. We'll have to wait for her to return.
It's good to see some familiar faces once again.
Sorry.
Don't ever let it be said that technology does not take time.
All right. Well, thank you, Your Worship, Council, and staff. Good to be in Quesnel. I've yet to present to City of Quesnel, so I'm looking forward to this. This will be good. So my colleague here, Bryan Johnston here, will be chatting about, we're going to switch the order a little bit. I know we've been asked to do our business priorities for 2024 on our low carbon transition and local projects, but we're going to kind of switch them so we don't run out of time, because I think you probably will end up having some some questions. So good evening, everyone. My name is Matt Mason, Community Relations Manager for Fortis BC. Joining me here is Bryan, Regional Engineer for Kamloops North. We'd like to acknowledge that we're speaking here today on the ancestral traditional territory of the LHTAKO DENE. Fortis BC is committed to reconciliation with Indigenous peoples, and our work is guided by our Statement of Indigenous Principles. I'm going to kind of switch, as I mentioned, I'm going to switch the agenda here a little bit. We're going to go to the local project first because I think it's going to be a little bit quicker, and then Bryan can talk and not have to hear me as much.
Do you want to trade chairs?
We can switch chairs, and then we can switch down to. It's there. Okay.
So yeah, thank you everybody for having us here tonight to talk about what we have going on. Just to clarify, you all can see the screen that we have shared here? Okay. We're going to look at a project here first for our Kinchin Street gate station. So our gate stations they take high pressure pipeline gas and they reduce them down to low pressure distribution gas that is then sent around to homes and businesses. And for quite a few years, we got in the habit of building these stations below ground in metal vaults, which is a idea that works very well in the lower mainland, but not so well in Quesnel, where we can't access these underground pits for about half of the year. So of the 5 or 6 gate stations that Quesnel has, this is the last remaining pit station. And we are looking to remove that station and replace it with a new above ground station. So what we've done on this project, actually we'll go here first. The existing station is located near the demolished Quesnel Secondary School soccer field location, right at the north corner there, at the corner of Kinchint and Bowrin. And you can see in this photo here, you can barely see it in the photo, we are a vault located below grade. And this is what those stations look like. The problem with these is that when in winter months we can't access the valves within the station for emergency response purposes, and the regulators that control the pressure are a little finicky when the piping runs are so short. So we'd love to put this above ground at a nearby location, and we'd love to do that with as little ground disturbance to existing roadways as possible. So we looked at a number of locations that could serve this purpose. Again, here's the current location, just a few blocks from where we are now. And we looked at a number of locations, and our favorite location there is location D in the bottom right of the screen here, which is kind of just at the underpass of the Riverwalk Trail where it comes underneath the rail bridge. Or not the rail bridge, the rail overpass, I should say. We did a location study, and the reason that location is our favorite is because it is on the existing route of the high pressure gas pipeline. So it means we don't need to tear up any existing roadways, and we don't need to install any new distribution pipe either. So it's very little impact as far as roads and public works might be concerned, and it keeps us from installing a whole bunch more pipe that we don't need to. Currently where we are at with the project is we have done a kind of preliminary options review study looking at the locations, and we have just kind of started our technical engineering design of the station on that proposed lot. We are now looking to get approval from the City of Quesnel to use that lot, which I believe, I could have my facts wrong here, I believe it's a provincial lot that may be leased to Fortis, but I could have those details wrong. And we would be looking for a construction sometime at approximately summer 2026, if everything were to be approved smoothly. Here's a closer look at that location. As I understand it, there are a number of remaining lots that are undeveloped here near that location. We are looking at the 2 smallest lots on the corner with the 2 property IDs noted here. And shown down in this snapshot here is a small overview of what the station would look like. It would essentially consist of a small pressure control building. A few examples shown here. The one on the top left is the one that was installed in Johnston subdivision just 2 years ago at the existing lot. And on the top right is another one in Quesnel. This one is in Quesnel Canyon Road out on the Barkerville Highway. And below is a look at a more complete station that has, as well as the pressure control building, a heater, and a telemetry unit. So this bottom image here is most likely the arrangement that we would be going for with this site. We know that this location is in proximity to a couple of residences, and we are willing to do anything that we can to make that more feasible. We're looking at specifically low noise heaters right now, and we can look at other options as well to kind of enhance the appearance of the station if need be. I know it's a kind of recreational area there with the Riverwalk going right by it. So we're open to all sorts of ideas and anything that we can do to make this more palatable. That's essentially all I have on the project. So I'll hand it over to Matt now.
Yeah, we wanted to get that into the public space so that staff and our staff obviously can work hand in hand together, so that as Bryan mentioned, we can hopefully have a good transition to bringing that project above ground, or the piping above ground. Okay, so we'll talk about what our low carbon transition. So we're pleased here today to share the Forest BC's low carbon transition plan. And we value partnering with communities and speaking with business leaders to better understand the community's unique energy needs as we strive to meet climate action goals and in affordable, responsible, and attainable manner. I really should have printed this off, but we worked through this with me here. Those of you that are not familiar with Forest BC, we start off with there's a little bit of background. So Forest BC is the largest energy provider in the province. As many of you know, Forest BC is a regulated utility company that provides natural gas for our province, as well as, however, and many people don't know that Forest BC also provides electricity in the Okanagan and the Kootenays. In fact, we own and operate 4 hydroelectric dams and own and operate approximately 7,000 kilometers of electric transmission and distribution power lines, in addition to more than 51,000 kilometers of transmission and distribution gas pipelines, which you're probably responsible for half of them. We serve 135 communities across BC and 58 Indigenous communities across 150 traditional territories. And in the city of Quesnel, we serve just under 8,000 residential and business customers. I'm not sure I'm on the right slides here. As an integrated utility company delivering both gas and electricity, we see the importance of both energy systems working together to support our communities. This chart demonstrates what happened in our province's energy systems to meet peak demand on one of the coldest days of December 2022, around Christmas. The demand of Forest BC's gas system was 21,368 megawatts, almost twice that of BC Hydro's. Recent studies conducted by UVic, SFU, and UBC have concluded that there is not enough electricity capacity in the province to meet our needs. The University of Victoria's study focused on Metro Vancouver and concluded that all Metro Vancouver's natural gas was replaced by electricity, would increase demand of the electrical system. It would be equivalent to needing an additional 6 Site C dams. So as you can see, we really do need both electricity and the gas working together. I know the narrative across the province is electrify, right? But in the north here, as we move even farther north, it gets pretty cold, and I think we'd all of us starve, in my opinion anyways, if we were all electricity. In 2023, the Premier and BC Hydro publicly confirmed that there was electric power shortage, announced a call for additional clean power sources in 2024. The importance of a diversified approach and resilient energy future are at the forefront of Forest BC's decarbonization efforts. Okay. We have an ambitious. We're good. Okay. We have an ambitious goal to significantly reduce our customers' carbon footprint and are committed to a low carbon energy future. Our plans are guided in alignment with the province's plans. Forest BC created 4 pillars under the. Sorry, this is really small. I apologize. It's ridiculous. Under the Clean Growth Pathway 2050 to guide our reduction efforts. Our first pillar focuses on energy efficiency. Since 2010, Forest BC has invested $300 million in energy efficiency and rebate programs across the province. And we just got approval, I think it was last year, for significantly more on energy conservation efforts. So get your windows done. You can see. Our second pillar is renewable and low carbon gases, which we'll go into more detail shortly. The third pillar focuses on zero and low carbon transportation. The transportation sector accounts for 40% of the province's total GHG emissions. We deployed over 900 natural gas powered vehicles and are fueling 7 BC Ferries vessels with LNG. Also installed 42 electric vehicle public charging stations in the southern interior. The last pillar is the global LNG in the marine and industry sector. LNG produced at Tilbury's facility in Vancouver can replace diesel and reduce 90% of the particulate matter in the local airshed, when used in industry in China, it also reduces emissions by approximately 50%. Obviously, that's a pretty big deal. Okay. Our second Clean Growth Pathway pillar focuses on renewable and low carbon gases. What is renewable natural gas and how is it made? RNG is defined as a biomethane, which is highly refined pipeline quality gas originating from a range of organic feedstocks. It's derived from biogas, which is produced from decomposing organic waste from landfills, agricultural waste, and wastewater from treatment facilities. Simply put, this is the stuff that we can take to the green bin at the end of our driveway each week and flush down the toilet. There are biogenic sources that are part of existing environmental carbon cycle. They do not emit any net carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. Forest BC works with local farms, landfills, and green energy companies and municipalities to capture and purify this methane, which will otherwise escape into the atmosphere. RNG blends seamlessly into our existing natural gas system, displacing equivalent volumes of conventional natural gas and lowering greenhouse gas emissions. This makes it a drop-in energy that does not require customers to retrofit their existing natural gas appliances or equipment. Okay. It is clear that virtually all energy sources emit carbon dioxide. The amount of CO2 varies depending on how long the source remained in the ground absorbing carbon. Renewable natural gas emissions coming from human animal activities, wastewater, examples, wastewater treatment, landfills, dairy farming, are already counted in the environmental carbon cycle, making it by definition carbon neutral. As you can see from this table, RNG is 10 times cleaner than the BC Hydro's electricity. 0.29 carbon dioxide emissions per kilogram, gigajoule, I don't even know what that means, versus 3.0. That's an engineering thing for you. Okay. Affordable energy is important for every community. While renewable natural gas rates are higher than natural gas rates, they continue to be cheaper than electricity rates. This slide shows April 2023 rates. Thankfully, natural gas rates have declined a bit since then. Traditional natural gas is the most affordable energy source in the province. A single-family home using natural gas has an average bill of around $1,200 per year. Approximately 2,200 square foot, a single-family home. The same size home on electricity, 100% electricity, after conversion would have an annual bill of $3,000 to $3,500 per year. If that home went 100% RNG, the average annual bill would approximately be $1,760 per year, with the lower emissions than 100% electric. Okay. We have a significant volume of renewable natural gas available for use. In fact, Forestry BC has entered a phase of rapid expansion of RNG supply. We have signed long-term contracts and suppliers for 18 million gigajoules of RNG, and these numbers are expected to increase significantly as demand increases. As a frame of reference, 18 million gigajoules is equivalent to the energy produced from Site C, or enough RNG to heat 320,000 homes. Transitioning to renewable natural gas leverages our existing 50,000 kilometers of existing pipeline infrastructure, as well as our energy storage capacity. Looking towards the future, we recently concluded a renewable gas potential study with the province, and which showed there is enough renewable natural gas in the province of BC that is double our 2050 requirements. We're currently on track to exceed our 50% renewable natural gas supply target by 2030, and we're aiming for 75% by 2050. So that's all I have at this point for my presentation, but I did want to say to the city and city staff, if we wanted to bring another person or so to meet with staff on this topic to get really in the details of it, we're more than happy to do so. We just want to get this out and obviously into the public realm to show that Fortis BC is moving towards renewables and doing our best to keep us with a low cost fuel. So that's all I have.
Okay, so I'm now going to open the floor up to questions from Councillor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, gentlemen. I got a couple questions. I guess I'll start with the new location for the station that you're building. According to, and I would defer to staff on this, but is this not in the pathway of our proposed interconnector?
It is, and we've been discussing with MOTI on the interconnector project for a number of years now, and they've advised us that it's not in motion on their side.
So they say.
Well, thank you for that delightful news.
Okay. I'll park that for just a minute. And then maybe a little less controversial question is regarding the RNG, which I know some councillors have been interested in that for many years now, but is there any opportunities for, let's say, lower volumes to capture that RNG without it being cost prohibitive for the municipality? And the example specifically is RNGs generated by our landfill.
That's a great question.
I can talk to that a little bit. I work with the RNG team kind of loosely. We're working on a project right now in Prince George for them to add an RNG facility to their landfill. And the BC Utilities Commission does put a cap on the project cost for the amount of gas it would produce. The cost per gigajoule of gas produced has to hit a target. And so that target is kind of difficult to hit depending on the capacity of the landfill and the production rate that's going out. And for these, I would have to assume Quesnel is on kind of the small end of the spectrum there. We have one in Salmon Arm that could be kind of comparable, that was able to meet that kind of economic test. So I don't think
Do you know the threshold that we can adjust?
Not off the top of my head, but we can always follow up on that if you want.
Okay, you're done? Yeah, okay, Councillor Rutenberg.
Thank you. You've probably talked to the CRD, especially around the renewable natural gas piece, because I know that one of the pieces they were talking about was around access to the amounts that you need, and that they were looking at farm waste and what it would take to create enough farm waste and have somebody actually have their land as the spot where it all goes to, so that you can actually ship it to wherever you're doing your processing. So it is about that scale, right? And I think that Tara Grady, that's the person I was thinking of, she's the guru for waste management in the Caribou Regional District. And I think she's really looked at this, and we just don't have the capacity to be able to do that, especially around farm waste in particular. And my question was going to be around the, were you aware of the the alternate truck route? And it says that you have talked to staff, and it's just one of those projects that council hasn't given up on it yet. Perhaps not in my lifetime, but they haven't given up on it yet, despite what the ministry says. Thanks.
I should note there as well, it may be of interest to you that the production values for natural gas, especially if you're looking at farm waste or something like that, Fortis BC does not always need to own those facilities. We have a number that are owned by private entities. We have a couple large ones in the Fraser Valley that are owned by large cattle farms and produce their own gas, and we just accept it from them. And so for those type of providers, they're not governed by the Utilities Commission like we are, and they don't have to pass that same economic test, so it can be palatable sometimes.
Right. I still don't think we have any farms that are anywhere near those sizes that would even allow them to be economical.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Runge.
Yeah, thank you. And you know what, my 2 points. One went to directly what was said here. We also have a few just a little outside our city boundaries where we have wood waste that has been deposited for years and years and years. The question is whether that can have a membrane put over top and collect some stuff to make it actually viable. Because I actually see together that we should be able to get there with regards to all the points that you had there with regards to landfills, wastewater, wood waste, and municipal organics. My second question, I guess, goes to the engineer with regards to location D. And having heard our bypass story, how is E sitting there? And then my big question actually is, in the past where these buildings have been set up, have there been any complaints from community with regards to off-gassing or things like that from those buildings?
Not necessarily off-gassing. The complaint that we get more often than anything else is noise. Yeah. And so we've been working with these heaters that are a lower noise value recently. There's also a good chance that in coming years that we will start looking at reducing any off-gassing activities for maintenance purposes and avoiding those altogether. But those kind of plans are still in the works.
And so then following up on your noise question, are there any sites out there that are palatable to neighbors that would be in close vicinity?
in Quesnel specifically?
No, we could actually go to other places too, because that would be my biggest issue. I'm sitting, I'm parked here, all of a sudden it goes, hey, you're going to get this building beside your house, which makes my house possibly worthless to me now. So then, would you be purchasing that land from them, or what would happen in that case?
Not for the adjacent purchase, I don't imagine, but there, like we were saying before, there are a lot of ways that we can kind of help improve the station. We can look at different types of fencing that make the station less visible. We have noise control barriers that we can put in place. We have low noise heaters and things like that. We've done these things quite often before, kind of adjacent to a lot of different city parks, and we can kind of make them a little less industrial looking if need be.
Yeah, we had one in Prince George not that long ago that I was involved with that we were able to help the landowner satisfy, because it was right in the middle of the city, and she was able to get her voice heard, and we dealt with it, and she was okay. She was okay with it.
Yes, so I appreciate that, because that was for me. If I was in person parked next to it,
Yeah.
I mean, what kind of mitigation could I possibly see?
Yeah.
And then, if we were looking at the bypass and knowing that I think everybody at the table here still believes that possibly with a new government or possibly with a different government, we can push that bypass forward again. How was E? Your location E?
Which location was E again? Can we look at that?
I won't give anyone a seizure as I'm doing that.
One more.
One more?
Was that Del? Top, right on the top there by the river.
Right there.
Location E, yeah, that one was a little bit tricky. That's actually a parcel that Fortis BC currently owns in fee simple. And there was a previous river crossing there that goes underneath the Caribou Pulp wastewater ponds. And we kind of looked at that, and it's a hard project there because we would need to renew that river crossing, which is, now we're talking about a $10 million project instead of a $2 million project.
So I guess for clarification for me then, if the bypass were going in, there would be, by looking at your main 6-inch there on, I guess for us, page, Lordy knows there's no page number on us, sorry, page 21 of 153 for us, we'd be cutting into that anyway. That'd have to change anyway if there were any kind of bypass, or there'd be some sort of, I'm just trying to think, looking forward, if there was a way to, this building, if it had to move 10 or 15 years into the future, if there'd still be room for that movement, I guess is my question.
Yeah, and that is a real possibility. I know the bypass discussion kind of keeps going in both directions. We've been experiencing it ourselves with MOTI. We have a couple of projects that are affected by this. We have a gas line installed on the existing bridge right now as well that would be affected by their decision one way or another. So we're looking into options for that project as well, and how the interconnector project affects that. But we are currently of the impression with MOTI that this could be a medium to long-term solution in this proposed location.
Going to get my vote if that's what it is, because ultimately we're still working for that interconnector. So if that were now to stop the interconnector, I'd be much more leery about that location.
Personally, my favorite of the other locations proposed here was the location F, which is the abandoned Quesnel Secondary School location. We were told that was being held in a type of provincial reserve or something like that, and that wasn't a good idea. So, yeah. So there are other options, but it would involve extending that 6-inch intermediate pressure pipeline further into town.
Okay, anyone else? I have a comment, as probably at this table being the most active proponent on the north-south interconnector bypass, whatever you want to call it. I go back a long time to when Alec Fraser was the Minister of Highways, and that was a project that he was pushing well over 50 years ago. And that bypass or interconnector is very much wanted by our community. And I can tell you that I'm going to be encouraging council to petition MOTI to at least keep that option open, because once Fortis goes in there, we will, our dream of having that bypass will be forever dashed, because there is no other alternative. And the original bypass was many, many millions of dollars, maybe even billions of dollars, because it was located so far out of town. But we have now found a solution that keeps the downtown happy. The Downtown Association, and I believe the other business associations, are all in favor of that. We have letters of support even from the North Central Local Government Association and Northern Development Initiative Trust, all in favor of this bypass. And the bypass is not specifically for Quesnel, it's for Northern British Columbia. And it's a very important project. And yes, we probably have a government right now that isn't in the mood to do that. But governments change, and even governments will change their mind. And so we certainly want to try to keep that option open, because once we go ahead with this project, as I said, our dream of having that interconnector will be forever lost, and all of the work that's gone into this. I can tell you that I think it was about 3 years ago, we had a public open house at the Senior Center. Senior Center has a capacity of 450 people. 900 people showed up, all in favor of what we were doing. So we're not going to let go of this. So just sort of putting you on notice.
And absolutely, we're not trying to stand in the way of that project. And it means it's a great project for Northern BC altogether. MOTI, we do have a memorandum of understanding with them that says that they are able to request us to relocate our services if they're in conflict with one of their projects. And from what we understand with their planning of the project is that even if it were to have a green light right now, construction dates could be 10 years out or more with the funding required for a project of that scale. So if that were to happen, that would give us enough time to explore other options for relocating the station again if need be in the future.
Well, I think it's a good time to start exploring other options, so we'll leave it at that. Is there any more questions from council? Oh, Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you, because that lends to the question I was going to ask about timing for this project. Is there a time piece here, or is it just because we know that it needs to happen?
No, not necessarily. In our regular process, if it were to be approved, we would be heading towards that 2026 construction date that we were looking at. But if that were to change, then we're not far enough into the project yet that we're majorly financially committed to it.
Okay, anyone else before we let you fellows go and get on with our agenda that I'm sure that you'd be happy to stick around for? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, well, thank you very much, gentlemen, and we will now move to the continuation of our agenda. Item G, items arising from previous special closed meetings. We have no business there. We have no unfinished business. Now we go to committee reports for the May 8, 2024 Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee Chair Summary. I go to Councillor Vic for that report.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a review of some topics we discussed on May the 8th. The first one, and I should also preface to say that there's reports coming on 2 of these items with detailed staff reports, so I won't go into too much detail. But we discussed, the first thing we discussed was setting up a statutory reserve for the future landfill closure and the funds that we've already managed to save to this point, and earmarking those in a proper reserve so it's less confusing for the public to understand why we have this money set aside. Right now it's a little ambiguous in terms of how this money is labeled. So there's a staff report coming. Next, we discussed a request from Pride Society. The sidewalk that was installed a couple years ago is definitely worn out and needs to be addressed. Pride requested that the refurbishment of the crosswalk be expanded to include elements of their new flag. It does add considerable cost to the project. So what ended up happening through our discussion is we put the lens of the Pride crosswalk over all of our specialty crosswalks. And it became apparent that we needed to find another way to make this more affordable for the community. So the breakthrough during our meeting, I would say, and my staff colleagues there would hopefully agree, we discussed an alternate paint type because the current paint that we are using, it's actually called thermoplast, is very expensive, and our experience is lending to the opinion that it's not lasting as long as it could because of our climate and various factors. So there is a staff report coming on a more detailed cost breakdown, and that's coming up later in the meeting. And then the final thing we discussed, oh, and by the way, tax notices are coming out this week. Good news. I'm kidding. It's not that good news. The committee, we then discussed the tax stabilization reserve. The committee discussed the current policy for this reserve and whether or not we need to make any changes, confirming the overall uses of the reserve as well as the idea of a reserve cap. It was agreed to at this point that we continue the conversation and it could be contextualized within the review and update of other city reserves. And do I have a recommendation out of this, or is that going to staff report? Staff report. So that's the end of my report, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vic. The next item on the, is there any questions coming out of that? Sorry about that. Okay, so seeing no questions, then I will now move to my committee report, and this is from the Public Safety and Policing Committee meeting held on May 21. The purpose of this report is to provide Council with a summary of the Public Safety and Policing PSP Committee meeting held April 23, 2024. We had a delegation from the Quesnel Downtown Association, and they attended to observe the discussions of the committee and to provide updates and feedback. The QDA will be focusing on proactive and positive events downtown. Discussion continued on the potential of the Quesnel Downtown Association and the Quesnel and District Chamber of Commerce hosting a business clinic regarding areas that businesses could focus on, including proactive issues to deal with the feeling of loss and helplessness. The committee also discussed the potential of holding a meeting between the city, the MLA, the Member of Parliament, all three BIAs, the RCMP, and the Chamber of Commerce in the near future. We had a discussion on Save Our Streets, or under the acronym of SOS, and the Save Our Streets group is planning on attending and presenting and participating at the Union of BC Municipalities Conference in September. The 2024-2025 Quesnel RCMP Annual Performance Plan Initiatives was discussed. Staff Sergeant Wassine updated the committee on the RCMP Performance Plan Initiatives. Number 1, enhance public safety. Number 2, road safety. And that included monitoring the new traffic services position in helping proactive crime reduction initiatives. Item number 3 under that bullet is accountability and governance. Maintaining a positive relationship and building trust with First Nations is important to the detachment. And number 4, with the introduction of a full-time mobile crisis intervention team in 2023, statistics will be monitored to determine if there is a reduction in mental health calls and overdoses in Quesnel. And the 5th item discussed under that report was employee excellence and workplace culture. That, and burning complaints, discussion was that burning complaints have increased since 2023. There are no recommendations coming out of this report. This report is submitted for Council's information, and I will now open the floor to questions. Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you. Burning complaints. Could you elaborate on exactly what that is?
That is regarding I guess, open fires and fires that require a call to the volunteer fire department. And I think it also includes nuisance smoke complaints. I think it's a wide variety of issues concerning smoke and fire. I hope that answers.
Okay, so I'm just kind of curious if there's anything that the city can do proactively, because I know it's about, when we talk about some of the restrictions for the types of fires that we have, is there an opportunity for the city to be proactive, to put that information out there to remind people about what they can and cannot do right now?
I think, and as the chair of that committee, I'll certainly take that to the fire chief, and I think that's a very good suggestion that we can put it out possibly in the next householder or on Let's Connect. We've got various opportunities to do that. Are there any more questions with respect to my report? Seeing none, I will now move to item number I3, April 25, 2024 Accessibility Committee Chair Summary, Councillor Runge to report. It says there's a late agenda attachment. Do I have that? Or?
Yes, it will come in a couple months. No, I wasn't at the last committee meeting. It was actually Councillor Vic who is going to be reporting on that. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Vic, you're on.
Sorry, I don't have my report in front of me, I apologize, but off the top, the thrust of the meeting, which I stood in for Councillor Runge, was in preparation of Accessibility Week, which is occurring the last week in May. And we discussed strategies, how we can celebrate that, bring attention to it, get the public's feedback on issues pertaining to accessibility, both positive and constructive criticisms. So the end result is we're going to have a robust social media outreach during that week, culminating in a special day on May 31st from around 11 till 3. We'll be having an open house at Spirit Square, and the public is welcome to come and say hi to staff and council. Some council will be there, and we'll be distributing a survey that we're hoping the public will engage with. Physically, we'll have copies at the event, but on Accessibility Week, that survey will be made electronically via Let's Connect. So that was the thrust of the meeting, and we hope to see the public on May 31st.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vic. Any questions on that one? Seeing none, we have no council reports and discussion items. And moving on to city staff reports under item K. This is item number K1, Admin Report 75/24, Specialty Crosswalks Annual Maintenance Costs, Superintendent, Public Works, Kitamura to report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. So the purpose of this report is to seek council's direction in regards to the annual maintenance costs and future budgeting to maintain the Pride and 3 Indigenous crosswalks the city agreed to maintain. I will quickly just go through a summary. In 2021, a Pride crosswalk was installed at the intersection of Reid Street and St. Laurent Avenue. At that time, it was agreed that maintenance and upkeep would be continued by the city of Quesnel. This line painting season, 2024, the city had planned to repaint the crosswalk. This spring, the Pride Society has requested to change the design of the crosswalk at a significant cost increase to the standard thermoplastic repainting. The city's painting contractor has agreed to repaint the crosswalk using durable road marking paint at a cost comparable to what was set aside in the budget to complete this season. Having said that, this type of paint will need to be repainted every season. This durable road marking paint is the same paint that we've used to paint the 3 Indigenous crosswalks that are located at various spots around the city. The Indigenous crosswalks also appear that they need to be repainted every season. So there's 2 recommendations. Recommendation number 1, that council approves the updated design for the Pride crosswalk as attached to the May 21, 2024 agenda. And number 2, that council approves the annual maintenance plan for the Pride and 3 Indigenous crosswalks and directs staff to build these costs into future budgets.
Okay, thank you for that. I open the floor to questions now. Okay, then Councillor Runge and then Councillor Vic.
Yeah, so for me, this is about crosswalks, so I never want the Pride Society to be offended but with my comments, and I don't want the Indigenous community to be offended. Because when we started these crosswalks, it was originally said that these would be 3 years, and that's why we actually came up with a policy that said, hey, if we want it done, it's going to be covered by the applicant who wanted the specialty sidewalk. And I do understand that the Pride Society and the Indigenous sidewalks, they came prior to that policy being created, because it was ultimately a budget issue. And our budget issue was originally, hey, $5,000 a year, and we can keep them for 3 years plus, and we can rotate them around. So we've gone from about $5,000 a year to our $25,000 a year, which for me is harsh. Just as a sidewalk, not as who it belongs to, just whoever had that sidewalk, the cost. So my question, of course, is, and I guess it will be going forward too, and I kind of alluded to it already before, is there any way that we can get support from any of the groups that have the specialty sidewalks to help with this paint, to make it a doable option or make it more palatable for the taxpayer? I guess that's my question ultimately, because I would love to see options that where we maintain as we originally intended, but if it becomes a big extra cost, then we just have to consider all of these things and how much we can do, or maybe it's just something that we all decide on doing anyway. But that's just my 2 cents worth for what it's worth. I think we have to be very careful about cost. I'm hoping that this new paint, touch wood, might last a little bit longer than a year, and then that in the future we can just touch up so it doesn't become a $5,000 a year cost. My question before was, is there any way just to touch up these things versus always redoing it all? And I understand with that thermoplaster, that plastic coat, it will get higher and higher and higher, and it gets actually in the north, I think Councillor Vic alluded to it, it gets rubbed off by our snowplows also. So it's a double whammy for us up north. Anyway, so that, for me, it's a cost issue, and I'm just wondering if I'm hoping that in the future it gets a little cheaper, I guess, is my comment.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Runge. Anyone else? Councillor Vic.
So, a question for staff, 2 questions. So if we elect to switch, so we scrape the thermoplast off, we elect to use durable paint, and who is the arbiter to determine, regardless of which crosswalk it is, we have 4 of them, who is the arbiter to decide at what point does it need a repaint? Because I'll preface it by saying 1 or 2 of the Indigenous crosswalks are looking like they need help. So, but one of them might be okay for an extra year. So who's the arbiter when it comes to making that final yay or nay on making the repaint? And then the second question, which is related, is if we switch to durable paint, it's an easier product from what I understand to work with. Can you not just touch up versus a complete redo?
So the Director of Public Works makes that decision on whether we can leave it for a year or not leave it for a year, and that was the agreement when this all came about. Your question about the paint is, yeah, you can, but it won't look the same. So, it won't match. The paint wears down, it fades, so you could touch it up. I mean, the painters will do that if you want them to. They work so quickly, it's just as quick. They come in, they paint it, it's done.
Okay, thank you. You're done, Councillor Vic? Anyone else? I've got a comment or a suggestion. I too, and I'm sure that all of us sitting here at the council table are concerned about the possibility of cost escalating every year. And one thing that we may want to consider or sort of keep on our wish list for the future is that rather than losing specialty crosswalks altogether, I'd like us to think about the possibility of having the sidewalk apron where you now step onto that, any of those 3 crosswalks, or is it 4? 4. That the patch or the pad of actual sidewalk, it might have to be re-poured, but that would be an alternative. And even then, the sidewalk, as opposed to the street, which is subject to gravel, to snow plows, to graders, to spinning studded tires, that would never happen on a sidewalk. So, I mean, it's just a suggestion that might be an alternative. And actually on a properly prepared concrete pad at either end of the crosswalk, thermoplastic paint could be used because it's certainly not going to be subjected to the wear and tear of the actual sidewalk. It's just a thought. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we'll now move on to, do we have a recommendation on that one? Yeah. So the recommendation is that council approves the updated design of the Pride Crosswalk as attached to the May 21-24 agenda, and that council approves the annual maintenance plan for the Pride and 3 Indigenous crosswalks, and directs staffs to build these costs into future budgets. Do I have a mover on that? Moved by Councillor Rudenberg, seconded by Councillor Vick. Councillor Vick.
Sorry, I got one more, I guess, and I'm sorry to put staff on the spot to try and come up with a number that I'm going to ask here, but if we didn't have specialty crosswalks at those 4 locations, what would the approximate yearly maintenance cost be anyways? Because crosswalks are required there anyways. What would that cost be? Sorry, I know, I'm putting you on the spot.
No, that information is easy to get you because we get quotes on our line painting and they quote per lineal meter or whatever. I don't have that offhand, but I can get you that information.
But it's a sum of money. It's a few $1,000s, one would assume. I know I'm putting you in a horrible spot, but
yeah, I don't want to
one would assume, and there's a cost, and
yeah.
So that needs to be, I think that needs to be considered in this decision as well, because we would have to paint those crosswalks anyway, and that would be a cost. So I know we're basically, there's a motion on the floor for up to $25,000 a year to do them all. But there would be a cost to do those anyways.
There is a cost to do that. Those lines are already built into those crosswalks. The ones that you'd have to do for a standard crosswalk, they're already there, and that is part of our policy that they stay there.
Yeah.
So that cost is already there. The increased cost comes with the colors and the design and the stencils and the time it takes to do them. That's the increased cost. That's
okay.
Yeah.
And is it fair to say that the total cost of repaint for all 4 crosswalks is so that's an up to amount?
It's like anything with any type of work we get done. I mean, it's forever changing. We're in no control of the cost of paint and what they charge. We put it out for tender every year, and we take the lowest tender,
of course,
of the people that do the work.
But to put that in the overall context of our conversation on this staff report, we talked about making decisions about every year if it needs to be done. Sometimes one will not need to be finished. One may just need a small repair. So if we contextualize this whole conversation with being prudent with cost, is it fair to say that it is an up to amount?
It's up to at this point, for sure, yeah.
Okay.
And I think, my recommendation is, and, having been on the phone with these, I think that the price they gave us is very good.
Okay.
Other communities have paid more.
Okay.
So I hate to say up to, because I think we got a good deal on this.
All I mean by that is you have 4 of them. One of them may not need to be done this year, so it's not 25,000 maybe, it's...
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes,
Yeah.
up to. Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and we will make those decisions. I think the thing that we're sort of struggling with this year is that the fact is we didn't have much snow. Our guess is they've wintered better than we typically they would winter. So the chances are we'll be painting them all using this durable road marking paint.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Vick. So just to staff, for clarification and total transparency, if this recommendation is approved, and I hope that it is, that will be time sensitive, and that certainly if it's found that the costs are increasing beyond the threshold that is established by this recommendation, that we will be revisiting this. Am I correct? I'm presuming I am.
I would say if it's normal price increases in line with the rest of the budget, that we wouldn't look at it. It would only be if there's something extraordinary to the price increase that we'd come back to council.
Yeah, okay, because go ahead, Councillor Runge. Oh.
When you finish.
Are we done?
No, when you're finished.
No, I think we're all ready to go here. I'm going to call the question.
Well,
If
I just
you've
have one
got another
question.
Go ahead.
And it goes with regards, in this case, we're going to deal with the Pride Crosswalk. Repainting it, not a problem at all. Redesigning it, that's adding actually an insignificant amount, is my understanding there? So in the future, should we need crosswalks to be redesigned? I don't know if we have to put this in the policy. Maybe we'll have to discuss that in PAPCOM there. I don't have no problem repainting it, but if we're redesigning things all the time, I would like to suggest that gets covered by these, whichever society is actually looking at it at the time to make that change. And I understand right now it's not going to be something, but in the future, should the Pride sign or flag change, and they have to make some big changes, I think I'd like to suggest that gets covered into the future by the society into the future.
Okay, I'll take that one step further. Would you like to add that as a friendly amendment to the motion, or?
Sorry, I don't want to add it, and I just want to put it out there as a public discussion, and then in PAPCOM, because we currently have some wording there, and we just want to make sure that we have the wording that is good enough for changes, so that we want to be fair to anybody who's redesigning, that it stays roughly the same for any society that wants to do that. Having said that, we're going to be pulling up the paints that we didn't have before, right? So that cost is already there. So this year, the cost is, I think, very, very minimal. But in the future, if it was a big change, that might actually be a totally different cost.
Okay, thank you. Are we ready to call the question on the motion then? Calling the question, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Mayor, may I get the second motion, please?
I'm sorry?
There's a second motion?
Oh, it's two motions. I thought it was all one. Okay, let's go to the second motion then. That council approves the annual maintenance plan for the Pride and 3 Indigenous crosswalks and direct staff to build these costs into future budgets. Mover, seconder. Moved by Councillor Rudenberg, seconded by Councillor Vic. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Sorry about that. Okay, onwards and upwards. Now I go to, one moment please, annual water report. This is report 7424, and I go to Superintendent Law to report.
Thanks, Mayor Paull. I'm here tonight with the annual drinking water quality monitoring report. This report is brought forward to fulfill the Drinking Water Protections Act requirement of water purveyors to provide such a report within the first 6 months of each calendar year. In summary, the annual drinking water quality monitoring report is intended to provide the public access to all water quality sampling results for the 2023 calendar year. The report also presents a summary of the City of Quesnel's water management practices and a brief description of the water distribution system. Such a report is required of all water purveyors under the Drinking Water Protection Act and the related Drinking Water Protection Act regulations. The attached appendixes contain a certificate of analysis report from an accredited laboratory recognized by the Regional Health Authority for all drinking water samples collected in 2023 under the City of Quesnel Water Quality Monitoring Program. A copy of this report and the monitoring results will be made available to the public at City Hall, as well as placed on the city's website. There's no recommendation with this report. It's brought forward for informational purposes only.
Thank you for that. This report is for council's information, but I will open the floor to questions. Councillor Runge.
Oh, hello, thank you. My question is actually with regards to page 39 of 153 under the water management section. With regards to the operator certificates and their levels of certificates required to run the facilities. My question is pretty simple, I think, I hope. Are we risk managed? Is it properly risk managed, and are we in danger of, because it's such a requirement of having a person on every shift, is there a danger for us with regards to retirements or things like that that could put us into danger into the future? Do we have to do anything with regards to additional training?
We're fairly well funded as far as the training requirements for the operators. We try to succession plan and have operators ready to move into those roles. The higher level certificates, the 3 and 4, are a little harder to fill because they require a bit more of an education background, so attracting operators to those roles is a bit tougher.
Yeah, thank you. My whole question is, if we happen to lose that number 3 or the number 4, if they're a number 4 at that time, are we okay? Because we need that water afterwards, right? So thank you for saying that the succession plan is in place. I mean, that's for me really important. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Runge. Anyone else? Okay, again, there's no resolution or anything required. This is for information only. And now we go to Admin Report 72/24, Water Treatment Project. We go to Director Coben to report.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to provide Council an update on the water treatment project. The goal of this project, which is to have all the background work accomplished in order to have a grant-ready project developed, it's now complete. So the preliminary design work has all been complete. So now we feel we've developed this project enough to have it ready for submission should the grant become available. The city water, it's provided from six wells directly to the water systems and then onto users. There's no treatment or disinfection in any part of the city water system. Changes to the Canadian drinking water guidelines back in 2019 in relation to manganese in drinking water has caused the city to be out of compliance with the new guideline. So as a result of this, a water quality advisory has been placed on the City of Quesnel water system by Northern Health. Work has progressed towards completion on this project in order to address options for the removal of manganese and microbiological contaminants. Work to date has included concept design, pilot testing, an update to the water conservation plan, and now preliminary design is complete. So the process for manganese removal selected includes low-dose chlorination to facilitate the manganese removal. Other processes looked at that did not require chlorination included biofiltration and membrane filtration. These processes are much more complex and come at a substantially higher cost due to the way that our city water system is designed and with the location of our water wells in different locations. In-home manganese removal was also investigated. However, it was ruled out early on just it did not meet the health regulations and the guidelines due to the service population of our water system. So that is limited to any system over 500 users. We can't do in-home. Public information has been an important piece of the project. Presentations have been brought forth to council meetings. Social media has provided information through Q&A on the project, along with links to further technical information. The previous capital cost estimate of $24 million reported in early 2021 to council is now, following completion of preliminary design, just over $35 million, which comes with an estimate and operating cost of an additional $766,000 annually. The project, if it were to advance to the detailed design and then construction, would take at least 4 to 5 years to complete. Enough work technically has been completed now to provide provision to the city for a grant-ready project to be submitted for funding to a federal or provincial infrastructure program should such a funding stream become available. Currently, the staff's not aware of any funding streams available with such a cost magnitude that would pay for this project. The recommendation is that council receives this report for information and direct staff to seek funding sources that would assist to undertake this capital project. And there's a attachment with the executive summary of the project, as well as some background on previous reports.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Coben. Questions from council? I have a couple of questions, comments, but I'm going to go to Councillor Vic first.
Thanks, Director Coben. Has Northern Health, are you aware of any escalation in the advisory that Northern Health has placed on our water supply?
No, I'm not, Councillor Vic. Basically, the advisory that was placed back a couple years ago by Northern Health, nothing's changed. They're aware we are working towards a plan for how we would treat our water as laid out in their steps to follow during the advisory. But we have been in touch with Northern Health, and they know that there is a plan together. However, I have cautioned them that this cost is a substantially far higher cost than for a community of our size.
So there's no time limit, there's no other punitive corrective action on this file by them?
No.
Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Vic. Anyone else? Go ahead, Councillor Rudenberg.
So not only has the cost of the project gone up over the past, 3 years, but the actual operating and maintenance has more than doubled. That's $750,000 annually to maintain a system that I know there are people in this community who are dead set against. Can you remind me, Director Coben, what the cost of those other types of filtration, non-chlorinated pieces were going to cost? Like approximately, so it's like 35 million to build this particular design. The next design was going to cost us ish. I know you don't have the numbers right there.
Yeah, and part of the concept design was to identify these different processes. So I'd have to get back to that information. For example, for biofiltration, off the top of my head, I believe it was around 5 to 15% cost plus of what this process would be. But with that said, now that we've advanced the design further, we've got a better cost. So what if we were to revisit that cost? I don't know what that cost implications would be, but part of that is as well as just the simplicity of this manganese removal process and treatment also may save on cost, because of the complexities of some of the other systems with our water system the way it is with our wells all spread out. It essentially increases that sixfold basically for 6 wells.
So the other piece for me, it says public engagement's been an important piece of this project. Council meetings and social media. That still leaves a very large portion of our community that probably has not been really engaged in this. And I suspect that there would be much bigger dialogue happening in the community if more people understood what was about to be moved forward. I don't know if we've done our job in regards to public engagement. I really don't know if we've, and this isn't on anyone in particular around this table here, but I don't know if we've really done a good job engaging the public in this. I'll leave it at that because I'm sure somebody else has other questions or comments, because I have a few more I'll come back to. Thanks.
Anyone else before I jump in? I do have a question, and this goes to staff. If the federal government, through the changes to the Canada Drinking Water Guideline standards, had not changed the manganese thresholds, would this water treatment project be necessary?
Well, that's a good question, Mayor. The project basically stemmed from the water quality has not changed. What has changed is the guidelines. So Northern Health, as our regulators, issues the city the permit to operate the water system. So that isn't necessarily a federal question. That perhaps could almost be a Northern Health question.
Yeah, that's kind of the answer that I was expecting. I guess I'll sort of add a comment there, that since it was the federal government through the manganese threshold, in changing the manganese thresholds or increasing them, therefore does the federal government bear any or all responsibility for the cost? And that's just a kind of a rhetorical question that if the federal government, through the Drinking Water Standards Program, had not changed the numbers, would we be even having this discussion? In follow-up to Councillor Rudenberg's comments, I mean, I have not been a big fan for chlorination. In fact, I was looking in my election brochure, and I was pretty solid on opposing chlorination and changing something to something that was somewhat less invasive as far as health concerns are concerned. The negative health effects of chlorine versus UV versus biofilter or membrane filtration, I think need to be considered further. I mean, if we're looking at a 15% or whatever percent uptick in the cost, that might be worth following in view of the threat, or at least the supposed threat, or its unproven threat to people's health. The projected cost impact in terms of I got to put my cheaters on here. In terms of the projected increased water user fees, has any estimate been done on if we do, because we're looking at something like almost $1 million in operational by the time we get this thing built, how is that going to impact user fees for residential users? I'm not expecting an answer on that one right here. And is dechlorination on the consumer side of the water shutoff possible, and how effective would that be? Does anybody know the answer to that? Because I can tell you that I would be one of the first customers to put in a dechlorination device to remove the chlorine from the water that enters my house. Does anybody have an answer if that's an effective way of eliminating the chlorine? Okay, I'll take the silence as I don't know, but I know that the technology is out there.
Well, yes, the chlorine, it dissipates over time. So essentially, if you filled up a jug of water and set it on your counter, the chlorine would, over time, would disappear. So yes, there is many filtrations out there that can dechlorinate.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any more questions? Councillor McKelvey.
Thank you, Mayor. Director sorry. Are you prepared to investigate costs for both options, non-chlorinated and chlorinated water at this point? Like the filtration systems for UV as well as...
Yes, well, UV is allocated for in a number of our, as well as chlorination. So part of our public the public engagement or the public communications was, a lot of it was more about disseminating information. So we've hired a team of drinking water experts, drinking water engineers. That's what they do to make recommendations, which we've determined the cost effectiveness, the simplicity compared to the detail of the other systems. So part of this project, as reported to council previously, was to investigate into preliminary to design this option. So that's where we've landed, and that's where we have costs. So to go back again and get a detailed design on another system, I haven't looked at that.
Okay, anyone else? Councillor Runge.
I think two things have to be stated here. First off, you can't compare our manganese requirements that the government or Northern Health has put onto us and just say, hey, because they came up with this, because we found health issues with that. You know, 50 years ago, it was, maybe it was more than 50 now, it might be 80 years ago, it was okay to light up a pack of smokes and it was no problem. So we find things health-wise that sometimes we need to deal with. So we've been given latitude, and I sure hope that we can get some funding and from federal, provincial, other sources, because I don't know how our town could absorb, by the time we get going, 50 or 75 million by the time this finally rolls around or something like that. Personally, I would love to have, I guess it was Urban Systems that gave us the report, just give us a quick estimate with regards to say, hey, if it's 15 or 20% more, now we have two things on the table. We're still, I believe, fairly, unless we've got the full design of our chlorination there, maybe because I think the previous decisions were made with previous council, and we've got some big differences of opinion here. The question is, could we get a rough estimate, just a, hey, and I think they've done enough of the, biofilters and things like that in other communities, so they know a community of our size, well, that might cost you. And if they say 120 million, we have to be ready for that to say, hey, that's a little bit too much of a difference. But, just not like as in-depth as the other one, but just a rough estimate. I'm not sure if that's possible. If it would be that, I think would alleviate a lot of the questions that we have around the table right now, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. And further to that, I believe that the city is a member of either the Canadian or the British Columbia Water and Waste Association, and there may be some information or guidance that could be obtained from that group. We are certainly not the only municipality that's faced with this conundrum, and so anyone that any help that we can get, or any guidance or information that we can get from associations such as the Water Association may be of use to us. Seeing no, I don't see, Councillor Rutenberg, sorry.
Thank you. So the recommendation on here is about seeking funding sources that would assist to undertake this capital project. And I'm not sure who to direct this question to, is what is the golden amount of grants that would work for us to be able to move forward? Are we looking at 100% grant funding for this? That's golden, but that never happens anymore because most opportunities for grants are always oversubscribed. So what is that bare minimum? Are we looking at 25%, 50%? This doesn't really tell me much about how we're going to fund this project, despite the fact that you're going to look for grants. Thank you.
I think the intent is that we know that we can't fund it ourselves, so we're going to start looking at grant programs. And when we find some that might fit this, we'll come back to council and say, hey, this is a 2/3 grant. We're going to have to come up with 1/3. This is what it would cost our users. Right now it's just open to see what's out there.
Okay, because I think, did I hear correctly, we're not under a time crunch right now, correct? We're not told that we have to have this system in by 2030.
That's correct. We're under an advisory, and we're
Right.
an advisory of a low risk.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other council members that wish to ask a question, make a comment before we move on? Do we have a recommendation here that is, I'm just looking at the report here. Okay, the motion is, or the recommendation is that council receives this report for information and directs staff to seek funding sources that would assist to undertake this capital project. I don't know if, hearing the discussion around the table, if we're actually ready to go to that extent before we make a bit of an effort to see what the other alternatives are out there, if there are other alternatives, and what those other alternatives would cost. I know that there was some discussion around the table about making a better effort to involve the public, to inform the public about what our plan is before we get past the point of no return. Is there any council comment? Councillor Runge?
Yeah, there is. I think we have to direct them to look for funding no matter what. We might have to downsize something, see what would make any changes, but if we don't start looking for funding, we're just kicking this problem down the road further and further and further. So I think we have to look for funding. I think they are already, when they're looking for funding, they're saying, look, this is not feasible for Quesnel at this cost. We can't afford it right now. I don't know. I can't imagine having an extra $32 million tax bill quickly chucked on us. So I really believe we have to start looking. And you know what? I'm hoping that in that time, because things change, technology changes, all those types of things change, it's not going to happen tomorrow. So, look for the money.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Runge. Are you moving or seconding?
I'll move it.
You're moving it, and Councillor Runge is seconding it. Is there any further discussion on the, Councillor Vic?
Yeah, I think I understand staff's angst with this. They've put some horsepower into a certain type of filtration using chlorine. And that would be the basis of which to make a grant application. Am I correct there, Director Coben? Okay. So what you're probably hearing here is that we would like other information about another system, and I understand that means to a degree going back and starting again, and that's probably not what you want to hear. However, I think Councillor Runge is right. This could be years in the making just to hobble together the funding. So I think in terms of risk managing, we put some effort into doing as the recommendation states. We seek funding, and then in terms of a pivot to a slightly different filtration method, we risk manage that, and when that moment occurs where we get some grant opportunity, then we somehow, or we entertain a pivot to other options. So I guess I agree with the recommendation, and I agree with Councillor Runge that we have to make some movement on this, because we will never pay for this in this community, for this price tag. So.
Okay, thank you. I'm now going to go to Director Bolton.
Sure. I just want to comment that we should give Director Coben a chance to talk to our engineers and come up with kind of a cost estimate of what it would cost to go back and look at some of these other options, because it's time to come up with reasonable estimates. So just we'll talk about it from a staff level and come back to you as whether there's going to be a cost to look at other alternatives.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, is there any further discussion or comment before I call the question on the resolution? Okay, seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, thank you for that. One moment, please. Now we go to Admin Report 6924, 2023 Statement of Financial Information, Director Bolton to report.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to present the financial information required under Section 168 of the Community Charter and the Statement of Financial Information for 2023. So the Statement of Financial Information is required on a yearly basis as per the Financial Information Act. The Community Charter also requires a yearly report on council remuneration and benefits. The expense includes all expenses incurred, not just from the training and travel accounts. So you'll see we got around to updating our format, so it looks a little cleaner now. And so the recommendation is that council approve the 2023 Statement of Financial Information, and that the mayor be authorized to sign the 2023 Statement of Financial Information on behalf of council.
Okay, thank you. A mover on the recommendation, please. Councillor McKelvey, Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? A lot of information. Go ahead, Councillor Runge.
Yeah, there's tons of information. Just a question. The Finance Committee has gone through all of these amounts line by line. So what, like when we deal with visa to me just means visa, you know? So as long as it's been looked at by our Finance Committee, so those visa things are actually checking off properly, then, you know, well, one of these things I think is visa payments or something like that, I thought I read. You know, and it's, I have to go to, I thought I read it as visa as one of the line items. Maybe I was wrong, but.
Yeah, it's on the first page.
Yeah, so I just, you know, to me, when I look at that, it doesn't mean anything, like World Bank Visa. Yeah, that's the one, sorry. You know, but I know that that goes with expenses that are attached to the, you know, towards all sorts of things. So what I'm trying to say is as long as I'm covered under Councillor Vic's, you know, piercing eye, I'm good with that.
So just to clarify that, FSAC only sees the city manager and director of corporate financial services visa. We have approximately 15 visas that are approved by the other managers, so FSAC does not review those ones.
All right, so then that my question would go to checks and balances. Okay.
Yes, so they're absolutely, all those, all our visa charges are reconciled by the individual, reviewed by the accounting department, and signed off by their manager.
Okay, anyone else? So we do have a recommendation that the council approve the 2023 SOFI report and that the mayor be authorized, et cetera, et cetera. Did I have a mover on that? Okay, so I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So the next report is Admin Report 6724, Forestry Update, Manager Robinson to report.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Council. Good evening. So the purpose of this report is to update Council on the Forestry Initiatives Program, including outcomes from 2023 and the plans for 2024. So from 2023, the update, Three Rivers Community Forest. In 2023, the proposed area of operations was selected. We got approval from the Inspector of BC Municipalities for the city. That was a special requirement we needed to have. We formed a limited partnership, established a management board, and we submitted the CFA, which is Community Forest Agreement, application to the province in November of 2023. So moving on to community wildfire protection planning, in 2023, the city treated around 30 hectares of land through fuel management. That's crown, overstory removal, and hand treatments. We prescribed 270 hectares of shelf-ready prescriptions, we call them. We reached 6,000 residents through FireSmart and carried out 28 FireSmart home assessments, and we issued 13 rebates last year. We also established a multi-party community wildfire resilience roundtable. This includes First Nations, Ministry of Forests, BC Wildfire Service, and the CRD. And we started our pet project, literally, of a pilot of goats out at the fuel management trails for some brush control that actually received a lot of national attention. Other initiatives in 2023 through the Forestry Initiatives Program, we continued to support the Provincial Forest Landscape Planning Table, which is a pilot. Quesnel's one of 4 pilots. We continue to utilize the Forestry Innovation Center as a hub for academic and applied research. There's currently 12 active research projects in the Quesnel Forest District. We hosted the biennial think tank in 2023, and we continued developing our relationship with North Karelia, Finland. And we worked on the feasibility study for district heating with West Fraser. That is still ongoing. And we also had the Bioeconomy Development Opportunity Zone risk rating project that was completed in 2024. So our upcoming plans for this year, the Three Rivers Community Forest, the application is currently sitting with the province, as I previously indicated, and we're assuming that we'll hear about the tenure shortly. Currently, we're setting up board policies, in the process of hiring a manager, and setting up other admin details in advance of the tenure coming online. Community wildfire protection planning. Currently, the city's conducting fuel management in the Dragon Bluff area, which is a portion of the Wonderland Trail system. And we're also conducting some fuel management at a polygon called Baker Creek. That's not the Baker Creek community. It's actually an area below Pinnacles Provincial Park. And then moving on to FireSmart in 2024, we continue our education efforts. We call May FireSmart Month in Quesnel, so this is really when we try to, hit homeowners as they're cleaning up their yards, encouraging them for those FireSmart choices. We continue outreach at trade show, farmers markets, and education opportunities of that nature, and we continue with our home assessment and rebate program. And 2 things since I actually wrote this report, we've had our 2nd year of the GOAT program. It was a successful program again at the fuel management trails for 18 days, so doing some vegetation management there using goats and sheep this year. And we also are encouraging homeowners to remove cedar trees and helping with a chipping pilot to assist homeowners in removing some of that historic landscaping that's causing some FireSmart problems and could lead to bad outcomes. And I'll stop my report there and open it up for questions.
Okay, thank you for that, and a very well done report. There's a lot of information in there. Thank you. So I'll now open the floor to questions, comments. Thank you, Councillor Runge.
Erin, thank you. She's been doing a great job, and for me, as a, my side gig is teaching, I guess, or my main gig is teaching, whatever. My students have, benefited from the Forestry Center and the projects you offer with Kofi also. So, thank you, and thanks for doing great work there.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we don't have there's no, this report is submitted for information only, so there is no resolution required. So now we will move to the next report, which is 73/24 Northern Development Initiative Trust, Recreation Infrastructure Grant Application, West Fraser Center Concession. Coordinator Coppin to report.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to gain Council's approval to submit an application to the North Development Initiative Trust Recreation Infrastructure Funding Program. Funding is available from the NDIT program that would allow for an expansion and renovations of West Fraser Center's concession. The project will allow the concession to expand its current workspace and menu offerings to better serve the guests of West Fraser Center. At the May 7th, 2024 North Caribou Joint Advisory Committee meeting, a resolution was passed in support of the city's application and to amend the North Caribou Recreations and Parks budget to allocate $100,000 for the project. Recommendation that Quesnel City Council supports the application to the Northern Development Recreation Infrastructure Funding Program for up to $100,000 for renovations to West Fraser Center's concession, with $100,000 to be allocated in the North Caribou Recreation and Parks budget toward the project cost.
Okay, thank you for that. Are you moving, Councillor Runge? Okay, moved by Councillor Runge, seconded by Councillor McKelvey. Any discussion? Seeing none. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Runge.
Yeah, just for the public, we discussed this at North Caribou Joint Planning already, so it's just a formality for it to come here. So that's why there's very limited discussion here.
Thank you for that. Okay, so I'll now call the question on the recommendation, on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you for that, Council. Now we move to item number 8, Admin Report 7124, Baker Creek Enhancement Society License of Occupation Agreement, Director Norburn to report.
Sorry, Mayor, you skipped number 7.
I'm sorry. What? Oh, I'm sorry about that. So now it's yes. How could I miss something that important? Admin Report 7024, Strategic Plan, Acting City Manager Bolton to report.
Thank you. So the purpose of this report is to present the City of Quesnel's strategic plan for 2024. As part of the annual report, the city is required to include a strategic plan. Once the strategic plan is approved, it will be included in the annual report that will be made public in June. So attached is the strategic plan that we've gone through a couple times. So just our goals for 2024 and future goals for governance, infrastructure reinvestment, economic development, forestry initiatives, etc. So the recommendation is that Council approves the attached strategic plan for 2024.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll now just call for a mover and a seconder on the recommendation. Councillor Rudenberg, you're moving, and Councillor McKelvey, you're seconding? Oh, I'm sorry, Councillor Mitch. Councillor Vic. Okay, so we have the motion on the floor. Is there any discussion before? Go ahead, Councillor Vic.
Yeah, I'm pleased to second this motion. Director Bolton, for our edification, when will we have another pass to make contributions to this plan for 2025? When will that process begin?
Oops, sorry. So generally we do it early in the new year, but Council, of course, can at any time decide that they want to have a strategic plan meeting and discuss it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on the resolution before I call Councillor Runge?
Yes, thank you. 3.1.2 on page 76. I understand with regards to the goals, but currently we're risk managing that, so I'm just not sure if it is just perfect in there right now. Well, the question is, it's asking for increased RCMP and bylaw enforcement. We currently are risk managing our RCMP down by 2, I believe. So that in my view of this, my read of this, that's not a strategic action. The goal is there. I agree with the goal 100%. So maybe just, I'm not sure if increase is the right word there, that's all.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that the intent of that was that there'd be more officers, just more enforcements. Yeah.
So therefore, no change required. We're good to move? I mean, council has seen this before, so this is basically one final go at the strategic plan. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. The next one was the last one that I was going to do, and that is Admin Report 7124, Baker Creek Enhancement Society License of Occupation Agreement. Director Norburn to report.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to obtain council approval to enter into an agreement with the Baker Creek Enhancement Society for use of the former lawn bowling building and grounds. In the fall, the lawn bowling club advised the city that it was folding and that they were terminating the license of occupation that they've held there for many years for the building and the grounds. The city advertised an expression of interest for the space and undertook a process to select a nonprofit organization to hold a license of occupation for that space. Council passed a resolution at its April 23rd, 2024 meeting directing staff to prepare a license of occupation for use of the building and grounds with the Baker Creek Enhancement Society. Proposed agreement with the Baker Creek Enhancement Society is attached for council's consideration. The draft agreement is for a 5-year term and is substantially similar to the previous agreement held with the Lawn Bowling Society, as well as the previous agreement between the city and the Baker Creek Enhancement Society for use of space in the field house in the West Fraser Timber Park. Under the terms of the agreement, no rent will be charged. The society will be responsible for all costs associated with maintenance of the building and the grounds, including utilities, with the exception of water and sewer, and the society will be responsible for costs associated with any improvements. The Baker Creek Enhancement Society will be the primary tenant, but shared use of the space with other nonprofit organizations is encouraged. The Baker Creek Enhancement Society have developed a partnership with the King Dog Sport Club and the Pet Safe Coalition for shared use of the building and the grounds. Additionally, the agreement stipulates that the building and grounds are to be made available to other users hosting events in the park. The recommendation is that council enter into the attached 5-year license of occupation with the Baker Creek Enhancement Society for use of the former lawn bowling building and grounds in West Fraser Timber Park, and that the mayor and corporate administrator be authorized to execute such documentation as may be required to complete the agreement.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Are you moving that, Councillor McKelvey? Moved by Councillor McKelvey, seconded by Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. The next one is Admin Report 76-2024 Economic Development Strategy Reference Group. Manager Reid to report.
Thank you, Mayor. The purpose of this report is to receive council approval to develop a reference group to inform the development of a new economic development strategy, and for Councillor Vic to represent council on this group. The city has received funding to update our economic development strategy. This update will include input from the business community across various sectors, as well as the community at large. To help guide the project, staff suggests assembling a reference group to provide input, ground truth research, share contacts, explore opportunities for partnerships on future initiatives, and review the draft strategy. The proposed reference group would have representatives across sectors previously identified as priorities or areas of opportunity, including forestry, mining, agriculture, tourism, technology, and healthcare. The group would also have representatives from LHTAKO DENE, the Chamber of Commerce, and Community Futures, and economic development staff will also participate in the group. Staff suggests Councillor Vic be assigned to this initiative to participate in the reference group on behalf of Council. At its core, economic development supports the economic sustainability of the community, and Councillor Vic is chair of the FSAC committee and is also the owner of a retail business in Quesnel's downtown, is a former board member of the Quesnel Downtown Association and Community Futures North Caribou. The reference group will meet 3 to 5 times over the course of the strategy development and will be dissolved at the end of the project. And there'll be additional opportunities for all of Council to provide input on the strategy. The consultation plan includes key informant interviews, a business survey, a community survey, and focus group workshops in addition to the reference group. The final strategy will be presented to Council for approval in 2025.
Sorry, okay, so is there a recommendation following this?
Yes, sorry.
I don't see any paper here, so.
Yep, it got left out of the agenda package. The recommendation is that Quesnel City Council approves the establishment of an economic development strategy reference group, and that Councillor Vic will be the representative from Council on the economic development strategy reference group.
Okay, so Councillor Rudenberg is moving, Councillor Runge is seconding. Any discussion from anyone? Councillor Runge.
Thank you. And given that it's a new group, will we be funding some startup capital through council initiatives, or is that required?
No funding is required. We have funding through the grant for the whole project. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Anything more before I call the question on the motion? All in favor? Opposed? Carried. So the next item is Admin Report 7824, Bylaw number 1962, City of Quesnel Small-Scale Multi-Unit Housing Amendment Bylaw. Director Turner to report.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, I know this is a bit of a long, hefty report, and I am going to try and briefly go through it as much as I can so that we can keep the timeline going here, but just back me up if there's anything else or if something you want to revisit. The purpose is, again, to review the proposed report or the proposed zoning amendment bylaw to meet the requirements of the small-scale multi-unit housing policy that was enacted under Bill 44 of the Housing Statutes Amendment Act. Legislation requires the City of Quesnel to eliminate zoning that limits lots to single detached dwellings or duplexes and adopt policy that allows up to 4 dwelling units on all lots in restricted zones. Restricted zones, you're going to hear repeated, that is referring to lots that are just, that currently just allow single family or duplex zones. Legislation prohibits holding a public hearing to hear community input on these zoning amendments. As such, staff will be sending out a notice of that the public hearing is waived, and that notice will be going into the paper starting tomorrow. As you will see, the province published a provincial policy and site standards manual to be referenced in the establishment of this new zoning. They provided site standard recommendations based on parcel sizes. Throughout the report, I'm referencing those site standards, and that's what we looked at to make decisions on our standards in our zones. Staff are proposing creating 3 new zones to replace the 4 existing restricted zones, which allow densities and requires average parcel sizes that are based on average parcel sizes and services restricted. The 3 zones are the RS1, which we're proposing to be urban residential, RS2, suburban residential, CR1, rural residential. Note that the initialization of them is the actual zone. The name is just for convenience. There are several amendments to the bylaw required, as you will see as you go through the zoning amendment bylaw, and a number of schedules that need to be amended for this bylaw. With respect to how we looked at this policy and changing our zoning bylaw to have these allowances, we looked at what is meant by small-scale housing and what we wanted to provide here in Quesnel. What are restricted zones? What does this mean in our community? What will be permitted based on the following amendment? What exemptions are required? There were some areas that province allowed exemptions, and I just want to touch on that quickly because the West Quesnel land stability area is an area that we are going to exempt from this, meaning that we are not going to allow the additional density in that area. We will allow secondary suites where a house is determined by the building inspector to be capable of having that upgrade, but that'll be the only additional density we'll allow in that area at this time. There's a number of factors for consideration that are listed out: building type, lot coverage, lot line setbacks, building height stories, parking requirements, ownership stratification. I've gone through those in detail and determined what policies that we're promoting or that we're proposing here in Quesnel, and provided that in the report. The requirement is that we submit this report to the ministry to show them that we have made those considerations and that we have developed policy based on them. At this point, I think I'd just like to go to the recommendation, unless there's any further questions from council. This is big, so I know I'm going a little fast for what it is, but with council's.
Okay, thank you. I'm opening the floor to questions. And thank you for shortening up that report, because there's a lot of information in there. So anything from council? We do have a recommendation there. I just got to go back to it here. That council directs staff to bring the draft bylaw to council for the first 3 readings on June 4 at the regular council meeting. So seeing no questions or comments, are you?
Well, we first have to recommend a motion,
Well, I'm looking for a mover.
Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Runge is moving. Councillor McKelvey is seconding. Okay, now discussion.
Thank you. Because for me, this is actually quite scary, and we've spoken about this many, many, many times, because our council, unlike a lot of the councils, I think, in the Lower Mainland, where we seem to have had major issues with development, has generally been very proactive on development, keeping our community goals or in mind. This scares me without us getting in there. But I guess my saving grace is that it has to go through our building department before they build. Let's say I have a house in South Hills or wherever, and all of a sudden I've had this house with my, our family's had this. We wanted this space. We went there for the space, and all of a sudden my neighbor has a fourplex beside it, and there's nothing I can do. That's scary. So I'm hoping that the government actually may look at some of these things. I understand the housing issues. I understand we want to we need to create more density in some places. I just sometimes think they do all one size fits all for all of BC, and it may actually, the whole reason what makes Quesnel for me wonderful and for a lot of people is the ability to have space, so that's, I guess, my half-cent worth.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Rudenberg.
And my colleague is correct. A lot of these amendments that came through the province, it's just that push to densify, and it's aimed at large urban areas. Now, are we going to have a plethora of builders want to build 4 units on a lot in Quesnel? I really doubt it. There might be a few who are interested, but so much of this legislation, and I lived and breathed this at UBCM, is pushed towards the large urban centers. And the whole piece around, public hearings is because of NIMBYism. Specifically, I could name the community that was constantly going, no, we don't want it in our backyard. So again, you're right. We do a really good job here in trying to make sure that, we stay within, the niceties of neighbors and whatever. But this legislation was not geared towards small communities. It was not geared towards regional districts or First Nations. It was geared towards large urban centers. And, even around, the push to have it on transportation corridors. Well, our transportation corridor is the highway. We're not going to push to have densification on our highway, right? For so many different, anyway. So I get your angst, but I don't see this being all of a sudden a change in what our community looks like because the government has changed the rules. So, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Rudenberg. You said my speech is exactly as I would have said it, so thank you for that, because the government has thrown a blanket over the entire province without sort of regard for the demographics, the differing demographics of different communities. And certainly Quesnel's not alone on this. I pick up a lot of information, on the web about other communities that are not happy with this wet blanket approach. So we'll see how it unfolds over time. So we do have a motion that the council directs staff to bring the draft report to council, et cetera, et cetera. We have a mover and seconder, don't we? Okay, so am I ready to call the question now? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, the next one is Admin Report 6524, Committee Appointments, Director Bolton to report. And before I do go to Director Bolton, a couple of things I want to say, and that is that I feel disappointed and somehow sad that removal of me from duties that I was elected to do is really unfair to my council colleagues, and I'm just going to leave it at that, because that's honestly how I feel. I will say that that I will recuse myself from the discussion and from the vote on the 4 recommendations based on the real or perceived pecuniary conflict that I might be subjected to. And there may be others at this table that may also be in that real or perceived pecuniary conflict. So I will recuse myself until this matter is dealt with, and then look forward to being called back in. And I hand the chair over to Acting Mayor Vic.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll ask Director Bolton to lead us on this one.
So the purpose of this report is to request council's approval of the following committee appointments. So the Select Committee for the Airport Advisory and the external committees for the Cariboo Regional District, the Northern Development Initiative Trust, and the Air Quality Roundtable. So on April 30th, Mayor Paull was sanctioned, and part of those sanctions included the removal from the organizations requiring council approval and city committees. Staff requested input from council to fill the vacant roles. The recommendations below are based on that input received from council members. At this point, no input was received from council for members willing to act as an alternate for the Cariboo Regional District or for the Northern Development Initiative Trust. So there are the resolutions there. Do you want me to read them and do them one at a time?
I suppose, but I've got a couple of comments, questions, and others may as well. So perhaps that would be best to do that first, and then maybe that might need to be layered in. The first, I guess, comment is there's 2 blanks there. Rather than leave it blank and have some, less certainty about what, in the event that the primary appointee is absent, should we not put the word acting mayor in to act as the alternate, and then the acting mayor, if he or she is not available, can nominate or ask someone to go in their place?
I had that discussion with our Deputy Corporate Administrator, and she feels that those groups require an actual named person.
Go ahead, Councillor Runge.
Thank you. So my question is, currently, the censure is for 90 days, of which I think we're into 60 left, somewhere around there. Why does this have to come up right now relative to just having someone standing in for the meetings that occur in between now and those 90 days? Unless it's already been pre-decided or preordained that we're going past those 90 days on things.
There's no preordaining here. These groups require us to have named representatives that represent, I can't say the word right now. You know what I mean. So
yes. So
we have to fill the roles. Yeah.
So if the mayor were to have been ill, these roles would have been covered by some sort of an alternate already. Is that not correct?
Well, the 2 of them, the NDIT and the Cariboo Regional District, had named alternatives.
No, I agree. So the alternative would take over for now. How about the other committees? Wouldn't there be an alternate if the mayor had been ill or something? Someone would have been in that position, or we would have just not been there for that meeting? Like, how many meetings are we missing in these 90 days, I guess is what I'm getting at. If it's 1 meeting, I would rather leave this and table it to some other time after the 90 days, because I personally disagree with making this motion now without letting due process hopefully take its toll. We have to look at this as we've gone from 0 to 100, like I said in April, and I'm just wondering if there's another way to do this that's a little more respectful, that hopefully we get some closure, something happening that's positive with all of this.
So I guess the challenge would, yeah, so at this point, like, for instance, the Caribou Regional District meets monthly, right? So there's been multiple meetings since this all occurred, right? But this is council, like, normally this is the mayor's decision, so this is very odd. That's why I just emailed council and asked for their thoughts. This is a council decision.
I have a comment, but Councillor McKelvey.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to see us add the word interim appointment, which kind of takes care of the problem until we revisit the 3-month censure sanctions on our mayor. If it's an interim appointment and the mayor has, I mean, we don't even have an outline of what that looks like at this point, but I think an interim appointment would certainly solve the problem that we're facing. Thank you.
Councillor, do you mind shutting off the mayor's mic there? I think it might be. Yeah. So regarding the inclusion of that word, I'm not sure if that's possible for naming appointees. Is that language possible to have that word added in? But I'll let you answer that first.
We could just add a motion saying that we will relook at these when the mayor's sanctions are lifted.
Well, we did. I think council has to consider that we passed unanimously the sanctions a few weeks back, and I think to complete that due process, this needs to happen. But what is missing from this is the second motion that we also passed, which puts a check-in on those sanctions and what the appetite is to review those sanctions and perhaps remove them or not. Sorry.
I would suggest that could be another motion after you take care of this, or you can make that the first motion. So if that relieves the angst, because any of these appointments can be looked at as a council at any time, right? It's not like this is, if you appoint Councillor Goulet as the chair of the airport committee, it doesn't mean in 3 months you can't revisit it. I think it is implicitly implied that. But if you feel more comfortable putting that motion there that when the sanctions looked at such time or when things change, then these get looked at, if that makes people feel more comfortable, I don't see a problem with that at all.
Yeah, so to finish my thought, yes, that would be a bookend to this. Councillor Runge.
So I guess, with due respect, Councillor Rick, we don't have a due process. We have a nebulous thing that someone else is going to decide for council when it's okay. And we haven't met with our Indigenous communities as a council. I'd love to have that meeting sometime so we can start this process, but we don't actually currently have a process that's moving us ahead. So we're here making changes that are just punitive. Now, if there's one that has to meet, maybe that one would have an interim person. But the other ones, if they're not meeting, I don't even want to entertain it. I don't think it's the right time. I think we need to look at, well, what are we going to do? Or are we saying, okay, this has happened. For the next 2 years, our mayor is off on these things. Because right now we have no out here. Or if I'm missing it, like, what's our out?
I guess I could point out the mayor selects the committees, right? So once the sanctions are removed, it will be his right to readdress these, right?
I understand what you're saying, Councillor. Our motion that we passed a few weeks back was clear on what the direction was, what our decision was, correct? It was clear. This is part of that decision, but I agree. We also unanimously agreed that there had to be a way to check in and confirm our progress or lack thereof, and that is missing from this, and I would require that be in there. Now, in the interim, you're correct. We haven't met to even determine the framework of what a check-in is or to discuss those measures, and that needs to be done, and we need to move on that quickly, obviously, because the clock began ticking the night we made this decision. So I agree with you on that point, but we made a decision, for better or for worse, that we were pressing forward with those sanctions as agreed to unanimously. This is part of that. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I disagree. I think some of these may be part of it. I think some can just be perked until after those 90 days. I don't have the dates of when these meetings happen. If some of these meetings for some that we're appointing councillors here for these things are happening after those 90 days, I don't even think they should be on this list, period. Even in the interim, I don't think they should be there. I think we want to have some respect here. That's my point. And like I say, I can't speak in favor of this the way it sits right now because we don't have a process. So we're just adding to our no process to say, here, we got a new process here that's saying we're going to switch things around. We should be looking at fixing these things up. And this requires us to get together with other groups or Indigenous communities as a council. That would have been my first thing. That would have been my first thing prior to everything, so that we'd start to have some reconciliation here.
Councillor McKelvey.
I agree with you, Martin. Councillor Runge.
Rhea.
The two organizations are what prompted the request. They're specifically asking for named individuals because they have closed business, they have open business, and prior to that meeting, they send the agenda packages and all the information to those individuals. So that's why they're asking for a named individual, and they're specifically asking for a resolution because that's how they proceed with their business.
Who are those two?
This Cariboo Regional District and NLRCA? Yeah.
So there's two out of this 4-bullet recommendation. We could certainly review those two because it's pressing. So what is the appetite of council here? Councillor Runge.
So having heard that, I'd like to actually, if it's possible, that we do every recommendation individually. Or otherwise, my thing would be that recommendation number 3 and number 4 are the ones that we vote on now, and we leave the other ones until a future date. And hopefully we have some meetings.
Okay, give it a go. Someone needs to put forward a motion. Sorry, Director Bolton.
Yeah, and I just want to point out, like, the Airport Advisory Committee has a meeting planned for June 11th, so at this point, we would need someone to send to that. So it's not just those two, right? And whether council wants to say acting mayor or something, but we do need people that will be responsible for those meetings when they happen.
Councillor Runge.
Rather than putting other councillors into this, I'd like to suggest that the acting mayor be put into 1, 3, and 4. Then we follow with the mayors doing it.
Number 3 needs to be a named one, the Cariboo Regional District. A named person.
So the acting mayor currently has a name.
I believe the acting mayor changes at the end of June, right?
We could just name it.
So you want to move that Mitch be the...
And then at the end of June, that the name changes to Councillor Elliott, I believe, is the acting mayor at that time.
But then we'd have to come back for another resolution, just to be clear, because it needs to be named in the resolution.
Councillor Rudenberg.
So just for your information, the CRD does meet every 3 weeks. So someone would have to be down in Williams Lake every 3 weeks. So just taking that into consideration on people's work schedules, et cetera.
Go ahead.
Fair point. Thank you. But I believe the acting mayor could make that decision also, couldn't he? Because it would go to the acting mayor. If he couldn't make it, I believe you're the alternate there, so you'd be going anyway, and you'd get the information, and I think it would still work out.
Any more comments?
Ria?
One of the requirements of the CRD for the person is you need to get sworn in, as you folks are sworn in as councillors. So I think that's one of their legal requirements too. So you would have to be sworn in, and you can't just willy-nilly make a decision that someone else is going to attend in your stead.
That's fair. I would suggest then that we maintain bullet number 3 as is, for simplicity, efficiency, and lack of perpetuating more bureaucracy to affirm different members. So I'll be looking for a motion to get this ball rolling here on at least one of these bullets.
Thank you. I don't have a problem with that as long as we understand that that's a temporary situation when we revisit the sanctions after the 3 months. Thank you.
Councillor, that's going to follow this immediately. Councillor Runge.
Wonderful. So I guess then I'm going to have to make that, I'll make a recommendation that number 1, number 3, because she's already been sworn in at the regional district, and that is there a meeting for the Northern Development Trust?
Yes, in June.
And you know what, given that Councillor Elliott's going to be the acting mayor right post-June, that maybe we just keep these 3 recommendations there, 1, 3, and 4, and that the other ones are not on the table at the current time.
1, 3, and 4. I need a seconder for that motion. Okay, Councillor McKelvey, second. Any more conversation on that?
I'm sorry, I missed something. So number 1, 3, and 4 are remaining. What, and who's the alternate for 3 and 4? You, Councillor Fick?
So for number 2, air quality, that would just be omitted at this time. That would be the only one that would be omitted at this time. 1, 3, and 4, we would proceed.
But 3 and 4 both have blank because they don't have a person named as alternate. So she was just asking, is that Mitch Vick then that we're putting in those 2? Okay.
Okay, so we have a seconder. Any more comment, questions on the modified recommendation? Okay, call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Okay, that's carried. So as per our conversation preceding that, we discussed putting a check-in period as per the sanctions. So I need a motion to that effect. Councillor Rudenberg makes that motion. Councillor McKelvey seconds that motion. And can we craft that wording appropriately?
Sorry, is your intent to book an appointment with LHTAKO or just to check in amongst yourselves?
That this is to be revisited in the same manner as the sanctions at large will be revisited in 90 days. Okay. Question on the motion, Councillor Runge.
Yeah, I think that we're missing something here. We're missing, or maybe that's a whole separate motion after this, because we need to have visits with our Indigenous partners as we've all made them the people that are currently running this decision. That's a little bit of an issue. Or maybe a lot of an issue.
Why don't we finish this one off and then we can have that conversation?
Thank you.
Councillor Rudenberg?
I have already put in motion a request to meet with LHTAKO, and they are in the process of speaking with their elders. So it's not something that we want a meeting next week. That's not going to happen. And I know you understand that. So just so you know, there has been a discussion, and they are talking with their elders. And I'm sure their elders have lots of things that they're talking about. So I will revisit that again, but it has been put into motion. So don't think that it's that it hasn't been taken care of, okay? Just wanted to put that out there.
I think I should speak. Can I speak just towards your comment? So that was never my intention. My intention is just that we're moving forward with a meeting with that, because I think that's vitally important that we do that before the 90 days, hopefully.
So there is a motion on the floor that's not directly related to this conversation. So any more comments on the motion on the floor? No? Okay. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So regarding the supplementary conversation, I think we need to put some thought into a framework on how we're going to regard these sanctions. Some of them are directly related to our Indigenous partnerships, but some of the sanctions are more separate. And I think we need to book some time to discuss that framework as soon as possible. So I don't know if we need to do that now, or can we talk that offline, or? Okay, but that has a sense of urgency now, because we're now 30 days plus past when this occurred. Not quite, close though. So we need to put a sense of urgency behind that. Anyway, so that business is concluded on this report 65 of 2024. So I'm going to go recall the mayor, or can I ask Councillor Runge to grab the mayor? Because we're done business on this issue. Mr. Mayor, we're continuing with Administration Report number 77, 2024. Page 117 of your agenda.
Thank you, Acting Mayor Vic. So we're going to go to 7724. Okay. And this is Admin Report 7724, Development Permit 2024-69, 310 Legion Drive, Development of Cedar Sales Yard, Director Turner to report.
Thank you, Mayor. Council, I'm just going to move you right to the proposal background on page 2. The applicant is proposing to create a seasonal retail cedar lumber yard that would be operational from April to October. The property is fully fenced with chain link, which is proposed to remain as is so that visibility into the site is maintained for security reasons. A detached flushing unit is proposed to be sited and connected to city water and sewer services. It is proposed to be screened. During the winter months, the water to the property will be turned off. The site is listed in the contaminated sites branch as it was used as a Chevron petroleum facility in the past. The applicant has requested that further environmental assessment be waived as there will be no soil disturbance with the project. The contaminated sites branch has confirmed that a site disclosure statement is not required for the amount of work that is being proposed. A variance is being requested to not pave the site. The applicant proposes to dust suppress to control the dust. This, should this become an issue, it would be dealt with via a nuisance complaint. The applicant has provided correspondence providing that their reasoning for the requested variances and their proposal, and it's attached to this report. The owner has significantly cleaned up and improved this site, improved the modular unit on the site, and has agreed to connect to city sewer services for the washroom facilities that will be placed between the modular office and the storage shed, and it will be completely screened from view. The recommendation is that a council approve DP 2024-69 for the development of a retail cedar yard on Lot 3, Town of Quesnel, Plan 8152, except Plan 19328, and that council vary Section 5.7.4B of the City of Quesnel zoning bylaw 1880 to not require the surfacing of the parking area with permanent asphalt, concrete, or similar pavement. And this is all subject to the following: the city obtaining a right-of-way for the existing sanitary sewer main that intersects the subject property, the developer obtaining a building permit for the alterations for the modular office unit.
Okay, thank you, Director Turner. On the recommendation, we're going to get a mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Vic, seconded by Councillor Rudenberg. Any discussion? Councillor Runge.
So I guess a couple, I'm not sure if we're allowed to ask this. Is the proponent in the room? Look, can we ask a direct question to the proponent?
The proponent is in the room. That would be up to the chair.
I certainly have no objection to that. If you want to go ahead and do that, Councillor Runge.
Did you want to ask the question first to determine whether it's appropriate for the applicant?
need to know a little bit more about the, what's the facility looking like? Is it going to be cutting, or is it just sales of
Thank you. There is a site plan attached to the report, Councillor. It shows that it is going to be open storage of cedar planks that will be outlining the fencing area. It shows the parking area that will come in. It will be, as we've said, it will be gravel. It will not be pavement. There is some proposed. There's an office that's shown on the lot. A storage facility there, shed, as well as showing where the outhouse would be placed on the lot in terms of where this is piled. There's the tree line there that does do some screening as well. The cedar storage is expected to be a little bit nicer than the previous storage of equipment on the site. The biggest concern I think we had was the dust suppression.
That's where my question came from with regards to the dust suppression. That's why I was wondering if the cedar was being cut. It's actually because that's why that question came up. So thank you very much for clarifying that.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just concerned about security. How high are your fences going to be?
That's the fence that's currently there, I believe, and I believe it's at least 8 feet there.
Go ahead, sir. Could you just have a seat, tell me your name, or tell the meeting your name, your residential address, and then either ask or make a comment.
There. Okay, my name is Dave Akerst, and I live at 344 Heyman Crescent out on the south side. And my son and I were looking at putting a cedar yard in here. I owned Fawn Lake Lumber down in Lone Butte for 5 years. So we were the only cedar yard in the north. So what a place to do it now. I've talked to the 2 lumber yards in town, Rona and Eagle, and they're all supportive.
I think that's great, but I think the question was, how high is your fence? And the question was centered around security purposes. That was the question.
It's the fence is about 7-8 feet tall, and part of it's barbed wire, and the back that the last owner put in there is construction fence that's all wired together. It's sturdy, but I'm not worried too much about theft there. When the lumber yard across the road has his outside, so with no fence.
Okay, thank you for that answer. Are you okay with that, Councillor McKelvey? Okay, so thanks for that. You can make sure you turn off the microphone, and you can return to your seat and listen to the discussion as it unfolds. Anything more?
Thank you.
Okay, kind of lost me here. We have a motion on the floor, don't we? Duly moved and seconded, so seeing no more questions, comments, etc., I will now call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. There you go, sir. You're in business. Congratulations. I'll be down to buy some cedar. Okay, the next one is report number 6824, City of Quesnel landfill closure and post-closure obligations reserve fund bylaw number 1965 of 2024. First three readings. Director Bolton to report.
Thank you. The purpose of this report is to request the first 3 readings of the City of Quesnel landfill closure and post-closure obligations reserve fund bylaw no 1965 of 2024. So over the years, the city has allocated funds to the future costs of the landfill closure, and these funds have been noted as part of our allocated surplus. Last year, the accounting regulations for asset retirement obligations changed, and the liability for landfill closure now is charged against equity and tangible capital assets, as asset retirement obligations are now recorded as assets. This has resulted in the city's surplus looking significantly larger, as the liability for the landfill no longer is charged against it. Staff is recommending that the allocated surplus that is marked for the landfill be moved to a statutory reserve so that it does not appear as surplus and that the funds are properly earmarked for the future costs that will be required for the landfill closures and post-closure obligations. This bylaw has been approved and recommended by the Financial Sustainability and Audit Committee. The committee will be looking at updating the policy CF2 reserves and deferred revenue policy to include this new statutory reserve and the growing communities fund reserve that was created last year. So the recommendation is that council proceed with the first 3 readings of the City of Quesnel Landfill Closure and Post-Closure Obligations Reserve Fund Bylaw No. 1965 of 2024.
Thank you. You have your recommendation now. It's going to turn into a motion as soon as somebody moves it. Councillor Runge, Councillor Vic, any discussion? Councillor Runge.
Actually, I'm really glad to see this. I think it's really, really important because as that fund gets bigger and bigger, it will just look like a juicy nest egg for something else. And I love that the interest earned on and everything gets added onto that, so hopefully make the liability for the community less, and if we get to a certain level, maybe by 2050, they don't want anything extra on it, so that's great. Thank you.
Thank you. That tells me that you're going to be voting in favor of this one. Anyone else? Okay, I'll call the question on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Now we go over the page to correspondence. We have a letter from Bert DeVink. Now, how do you want this handled, Rhea? Do you want to read that into the record, or do you want me to read it, or? I'll let you read. You can encapsulate it if you want. So you take it away. That's the way we usually do it.
Letter dated May 8th from Bert DeVink. Camosun College recently gifted to me a metal moose sculpture that I created at the college as an industrial arts student more than a half a century ago. It's understood by the college that I, in turn, would gift the sculpture to the city for permanent display as public art. I hope the city will accept my offer of the moose. A quote of $5,580 plus tax for professionally repairing, sandblasting, repainting, clear coating, and delivering the moose to its permanent home was received. Should the city be agreeable to accepting my gift, I would be happy to discuss a couple of ideas that I have in mind for a permanent home for the moose.
Okay, thank you, Rhea. I just want to add that Aaron Harder, who has provided a quote, and he's a professional public art creator and fixer-upper. He's submitted a quote of $5,580 plus tax. One interesting note that's in here is he says that if he were asked to create the moose sculpture from scratch, the cost would be estimated at $65,000. So Bert is asking, and actually Bert had planned to be here tonight, but Bert is not in great health, and I'm surprised that he's not here. But he would like to get an answer from the city, and I don't know if I would suggest that possibly this might go to PABCOM for consideration and recommendation ASAP. Bert has a couple of ideas as to where the moose could be permanently displayed if the city is willing to accept this gift. So, Councillor Vic.
Mr. Mayor, I think Councillor Runge would like it on his committee. He could speak to that. However, we have a policy, donation policy AC-12, that covers donations. And so I might suggest that we hand this off to our friends at Public Works to vet the estimate for repair, also to vet possible locations, and then this come back as an official staff report with all the costs properly, not to say this letter's not proper, but to put the city's lens on it. And then we could probably make a decision once we have that report.
Yes, that's great. Okay, I'm going to go to Councillor Rudenberg.
Great. Great, thanks. So not to be the wet blanket here, I do like your thought process there. Since we last discussed the moose, you know, community enjoys contacting you about these kinds of issues. And the biggest question is, why are we spending money on this when we have other more pressing issues in our community? They want to know what the mayor's stance is on forestry. Have you talked to West Fraser since you've been elected? Have we had them come to council? There are bigger things in this community to take care of than bringing a moose. And the fact that he's willing to donate it to us, great, but it's still going to cost us money. And we talked about this before. The whole process of this is right out the window because it didn't even come to us as council first to see if we really wanted it or not. So I go back to that process issue and the fact that, okay, so $5,500, and then now we're talking about what it's going to cost to actually place it somewhere. So we're including city costs for workers to do this. So I'm having a really hard time. I love the fact that he's graciously willing to gift it to us, but we've missed the boat on process completely here. And people in the community are wondering why we're spending money on this when there are so many other pressing issues that we should be concerned about.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Rudenberg. Anyone else? I hope that this doesn't sort of sit on the back burner for too long, because as I said, Mr. DeVink is in failing health, and this was all, it wasn't my idea. It was ex-mayor Nate Bello that called me and asked me if, you know, what I thought. And I was pretty excited about the idea, and I apologize for missing the, you know, maybe missing the cue as far as process is concerned. But I'm fully aware of Mr. DeVink's situation, and so John and I, we went to Victoria, and I spent almost $2,000 of my own money, and Councillor Vic, I thank you for your contribution towards that, and also to ex-Mayor Bello. But I'm not complaining about that. I just basically paid the shot myself. So I hope that this doesn't die on the vine, because I think I could see this moose, and you've got a picture of it there. I could see this moose being quite an attraction for selfies. You know, if it was down in the LHTAKO Park, or if it was in the campground, or even in front of the Visitor Museum Center, I think it would be quite an attraction. It would probably upstage the Gold Pen, if you don't mind me saying. So I'll leave it at that. And so, Councillor Vic.
Yeah, I just got one more comment, and I certainly appreciate Councillor Rudenberg's sentiment. There are many, many priorities right now, but it's not out of the pale. We have accepted donations in the past. From Rotary gave us a clock, and that clock cost us a few $1,000 in repairs a couple of years ago. And that's okay, because it's a great asset for the community. I also see the moose could be an asset, and all I'm trying to suggest is that we try and get some process injected back into this. I think that's the best way, is to get staff to vet the information we're presented and discuss a location and give us a cost. And at that point, if that is beyond the pale and not possible, then it will get voted down when that staff report materializes.
Okay, so
and then also, with respect to Mr. DeVink, if it's not something the city is willing to participate with, there may be other opportunities for commercial partnerships. But the wish was to come this direction first, and I think we should follow through on that.
Yeah, and I just want to say that the understanding from Camosun College was that it was going to be gifted to the city. And certainly I'm not thinking that we're going to load the moose back up and take it back to Camosun if it doesn't materialize, but just keep that in mind, everybody. So, are you prepared to make a recommendation, Councillor Vic?
Yeah, sure. I'll, as per my first comment, I'll make that recommendation.
Yeah, I just wanted to suggest that Public Works definitely can do some of the groundwork, but it would be great if we could get a committee assigned to it, just so that we have someone to vet that information from. Say we're possibly looking at these locations. Do you have any other ideas? You know, just to do some vetting. Otherwise, it's pretty open-ended what we might be bringing back to council.
Okay, well, that will all come out in the wash.
I was looking for a staff report, but I understand Director Bolton's concern. There has to be some council input during the process.
Okay, so, and you're seconding? Oh, go ahead. You got a comment?
If they're looking for volunteers to sit on a committee, I'd be more than happy to do that.
I think the intent from Councillor Vic is that this go to staff first, and then we'll take it one step at a time. But again, if we can, time is of the essence. So, go ahead, Councillor Runge.
So I think I need a little clarification from Ms. Bolton with regards to the committee idea that you were thinking about.
I was thinking probably FSAC's the most appropriate since there's costs involved here.
Okay, and let's not forget that FSAC actually did make a recommendation to get the ball rolling, and then when it was discovered that the moose indeed was not city property and therefore I was not eligible to receive expenses to go and get it, I said, okay, I'm going to go get it anyhow. So, I mean, the FSAC has already sort of acknowledged that there would be some expense there, and actually the estimate is very close to what was recommended, or what was recommended by FSAC, but then was withdrawn.
So if I can add on to that, I also think it should be in PABCOM, because we have somewhere in there we have to have that discussion with regards to gifts to the city that cost the city money before the gifts are even ready to be done. Put with, I have an old, piece of equipment in the back of my yard. I'd like to donate it to the city. It's going to cost you a little bit to haul it away, and maybe you can put it somewhere. That's the wrong way of going through process. So I think the process has to be looked at sometime with regards to gifts. Notwithstanding what's going on here, all right? But we have to look at these processes going forward, because otherwise we open up ourselves for all sorts of things where people want to give back to the community. But if everything has a $5,000 to $10,000 cost before we can even look at where we're putting it, that's also something we want to be cognizant of. I agree absolutely with your motion, though, Councillor Vic, with regards to having someone look at it to say, hey, what's this going to cost? Because I honestly believe this could be a fabulous asset for Quesnel.
Go ahead, Councillor Vic.
Yeah, Councillor Runge just hit the nail on the head. And certainly if it ends up at FSAC for a pass, certainly. I read policy AC-12. It's pretty weak. It's one sentence long, so it needs to be fleshed out.
Okay, help me here. Do I have a motion on the floor? You do. Okay, and it's duly moved and seconded? Okay, am I ready now? Are we ready now to vote on the motion? No more comment? No more question? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Opposed? No? Carried. Unanimous. Okay. Thank you for... Let me get the microphone going here. Thank you for that. And then we have a letter from the Prospectors Car Club, March 26, road closure request, Quesnel down, and there's also accompanying that is a letter from the Quesnel Downtown Association in support of moving the show and shine, or the car club show, back to the downtown, and there's concurrence from the Director of Public Works, the Staff Sergeant at the Quesnel Detachment. Do we have a recommendation that accompanies this?
Mayor, Matt can
Go
speak
ahead.
to it. Director Thomas can speak to it.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear that there has been some changes to sort of their parade route after discussions with the Prospectors Car Club, the fire chief, Public Works, and all that. And really, at the end of the day, the Barlow Avenue section there that they're asking to be closed, we've agreed not to close that. So Barlow Avenue would stay open, as would Shepherd. So I just wanted to let you know that before we make a decision on what's going on there.
Okay, and so the car club is aware of, and they can live with that change?
Absolutely, yeah, and we've been meeting and talking and all that stuff, so they're well aware, and so is MOTI. We've also got them involved because we have to keep sort of the ins and outs of the city working, and they're well aware, and there'd have to be a permit process. But yes, the Prospector Car Club is working with us on that.
Good show. I mean, at the end of the day, I think I certainly would like to see the car show back downtown, as would the Downtown Association, and it's a lot easier to see and look at all of the cars when they're nicely lined up, because many times I've been down at the park there and realized that I missed a pocket of cars, and I like to spend my time looking at those cars. So go ahead, Councillor Runge.
So sorry, I'm blind here, I guess. I have a question with regards to, is this for a date? Like, I don't see the date here anywhere. And I'm in favor of it. I just would like to put the date into my calendar.
Can we get back to you on that? Because I can't see it here. Anybody help me on staff as to when this event's going to happen?
Is that June 15th or something like that? It's in August sometime. I think August 15th or something.
Yeah, it's usually right in the middle of August. And I know I'm going to miss it, I'm sure, because I've got other plans. So we do have a resolution. Mike, do you have a date? You look like you got a smile on your face. It says you got the date.
August 16th, 17th, 18th.
Yep. Yeah, you're right.
Thank you. I'll be away on a fishing trip at that time, but certainly I look forward to it working. So are we ready to move on the motion to approve?
I think so.
Okay, and we have a mover and seconder? Go ahead, Councillor Vic.
I'll make the motion, but do we not have policy that we permit staff to take the lead on this? Or
Not
is
for
that
road
on?
closure.
Not for road closure, okay. I will make the motion for this event.
Okay, moved by Councillor Vic, seconded by Councillor Rudenberg. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Okay, that's correspondence out of the way. The only two bylaws, we've got three bylaws. Bylaw number 1959, City of Quesnel Hotel Tax Revitalization. Bylaw number 1959 of 2024, third reading. Motion, please. Moved by Councillor Vic, seconded by Councillor McKelvey. Is there any discussion on that one? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Council. Now we go to bylaw number 1963, City of Quesnel Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw for 120 Nadeau Street, third reading. Mover. Moving by Councillor Runge, seconding Councillor McKelvey. Any discussion? No discussion? Councillor Runge.
This is, I guess, to Tanya. Tanya, on that, no, maybe I'll talk to you individually. It's okay, I'll pass. Sorry.
You're good?
Yep.
So I can now call the question? Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Carried. That's bylaw number 1963 out of the way, and the accompanying bylaw is bylaw number 1964, City of Quesnel zoning amendment, bylaw number 1964 of 2024 for 120 Nadeau Street, third reading. Mover, please. Councillor Rudenberg, I'm sorry, it's getting late. Councillor McKelvey, I knew you were going to get in there somewhere. So, okay, we've got a mover and a seconder. Any discussion? No discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Well done, Council. We have no new business. We have information and question period. No changes to upcoming meeting schedule. No changes to committee appointments, announcements, and events. I have nothing. Does anyone have anything at this point? Gallery questions. Is there anyone in the gallery that would like to come up and ask a question? When you come up, please announce your name, your residential address, and make sure that you push the button, and it has to be a question that is pertinent to tonight's agenda.
Hello, my name's Walter Osip, and I live at 117 Lawler Drive. And I would like to make some questions on the tax exemption bylaw, bylaw 1959, and I guess that's the one, right?
You're referring to the hotel tax exemption bylaw that we just passed on third reading. Okay, go ahead with your question.
Well, I have a couple of questions, actually. One is, Is the council aware of the amount of tax revenue that we're foregoing for this?
I'm going to have to go to staff if anybody's, I mean, I don't know if you're looking at a specific hotel or a specific project.
Well, what I'm looking at is the maximum cost over a 5-year period of $250 million for assessed value of improvements.
250, oh, that's the maximum cost.
The maximum assessed value of properties for over a 5-year period that apply for the grant, right, or the bylaw.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. So I did some figuring out on this, and as far as the tax goes, I only can make assumptions as far as what the mill rate would be for a hotel or something like that. My mill rate, I used mine, about 1%, 1.2. And a $50 million hotel would get a benefit of a $500,000 taxes in 1 year if their mill rate was similar to me.
Okay, just for clarification, you understand that this tax exemption bylaw applies only to the municipal portion. It doesn't apply to regional district, school, hospital, recreation.
The municipal being us.
Pardon me?
The municipal being us. I did not know that.
For general municipal purposes only.
Okay, what category would that be under my tax statement?
Well, I don't understand it. Unless you're the owner of the hotel, it wouldn't have. Are you basically saying, or you're asking the question, you know, how much money would you be out on your taxes?
No. What I'm asking is, if these people have tax exemptions, how much are they going to be on a $250 million assessed value?
Can staff help me out with that?
So I can't answer that off the top of my head, but it would be based on the mill rate for general for commercial buildings.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what would that mill rate be?
Off the top of my head, it's around $15, $16 per thousand. Yeah.
So that percentage would be 1 point?
In that range, yeah.
So if you have a value of, let's say, $50 million, what would be the taxes they would not pay for that $50 million hotel that they built?
I'd have to do the math to figure that, but yeah, and I can't do that off the top of my head, sorry. But yes, no, it would be a substantial amount, but council recognizes the economic development that this would bring to our community and the future taxes that it would bring after the 10 years.
You're talking anywhere up from up to a tax deferral or tax forgiveness up from now for up to 15 years.
It's a 10-year bylaw.
But if I apply for it at 4 years, 11 months for this application for the exemption, it would go on for another 10 years after that.
It's 10 years after construction.
So it could last up to 15 years.
No, the exemption can only last 10 years.
But we will start paying it the moment this bylaw is passed and somebody's applied for it.
No, not until the construction is completed and it makes it onto the tax roll.
Okay, so it's 10 years from that time.
It's a 10-year package.
Yeah,
total.
And also for renovations as well.
Renovations, I think, are up to 500,000. Yeah.
So has anybody kind of priced this out?
A local motel, for instance, as long as they spend and are able to actually prove that they spent 500,000 minimum, they would be eligible for a tax exemption for that 500,000 over 10 years.
Okay.
Go ahead, Councillor Runge.
Yeah.
So I absolutely agree with you. So if it was totally utilized, it would cost us, or we would forego $2.5 billion a year in taxation.
Yes, I figured that out. I figured out over the term, you're looking at $30 million.
But that, The issue is we're not having big construction in Quesnel. We haven't had it for years and years and years. So for us to get hotels to up their game to levels that when Northern Games or a sports event comes here and says, I want to stay in Quesnel versus I want to go to Prince George and stay in Prince George because our hotels aren't good enough or we don't get enough good rooms, this is why we're doing it. It's as an incentive for builders to build. And you're right, they are going to save taxes for 10 years. And it was intentional. We don't think we're going to get $250 million worth of growth. If we did, from my perspective, and I think from a lot of councillors' perspective, that growth in our community in those buildings would be fairly solid and good. We are at a deficit for housing, we're at a deficit for hotels, and we're at a serious deficit of hotels that tourists, they forego Quesnel to go to Prince George because they feel they don't have, if certain hotels are full, they just move on. So yeah, we're trying to build that up. And yes, we intentionally did it that way to.
But I can see that, but a hotel's not going to, a hotel's not going to build a hotel here unless they have a business case for that hotel. You can't buy these people to build a hotel for you. Is that what you're saying? Or do renovations or stuff like that?
I think over time, we, as Quesnel grows and as different things happen at the different mines around the community, yes, I think the business case, if that's that 1% that they're saying, look, if this is the incentive that gets them here, I'd be all about getting them here. Because once they're here, we now have that building here in town.
I'm going to go to Councillor Rudenberg here, but I just want to say that this is nothing new. Municipalities are doing this all over the place in order to encourage economic development, and I will say that there were concerns raised after Minerals North and after the Northern BC, or pardon me, the BC Winter Games that hotel accommodation wasn't up to expectation, and also the city many years ago made a significant tax exemption to West Fraser mills to get them to build their mill here. And it was quite controversial at the time, but I think in retrospect, I don't think there's anybody really that regrets that decision. I'm going to go to Councillor Rudenberg.
Thank you. So you made mention a couple times of renovations. So this isn't just for a new hotel. We have other hotels that possibly, looking at what's coming down the tubes with new hotels, would go, I'd like to renovate mine. So this tax exemption would only be on the renovation. It would not be on the rest of the building that's already there. So just so you understand that. And also, any of the city services that run to the hotels, they still pay those. They don't get exempted from those for the 10 years. So just a few points of clarifications. And I get it, like 10 years seems like a long time, but it's kind of like one of the comments that was made is it's taxation that we would not see if they didn't build. So it's kind of like that, it's kind of I don't know what the word to use is, but if they don't build, then, that whole hosting thing that we want to do for the community, the whole piece of bringing people to our community, it's going to be a hard push. And once they build it, and once their 10 years is up, we now have another tax base, where if they didn't build, we wouldn't have a tax base anyway, right? So it's a tough sell to somebody hearing that they get 10 years of tax exemption, but it's for it's part of our community economic growth strategies, how we can get.
And if I may, other levels of local regional government will benefit from this, i.e. Caribou Regional District, school, hospital, health. It's not just yes, the municipality, the city council here is taking one for the team, the community team, to get this thing going. And yes, it is controversial, but we've sat and talked about this at committee and at council for some time. And so that's where we're going with it.
I understand that, but what also I'm saying is that doesn't help me today. I listened today about how short you are for money, that $21 million for a water plant, this for that, and this for that. And when the bill comes due, I'm the one that's going to be paying for it, and the fellow taxpayers. We tax these hotels or the businesses that come to town or do renovations. Maybe they can help pay for it. I'm not worried about it's going to happen in 10 or 15 years of finally getting taxes. I'm worried about what's happening to my taxes today.
Okay, so I think I'm going to close this off because this is turning into more of an editorial comment back and forth. I thank you for your comment. I thank you for your concern and for your question. Okay? Yeah, and thank you. I mean, that's why we have this question period. Is there anyone else from the gallery that would like to ask a question that pertains to anything on the agenda? Okay, so one moment. I don't have anybody else. So we have no other gallery questions, so now I'll call for a motion to adjourn. Councillor Vic is moving and Councillor Runge is seconding to adjourn at 8:30 p.m. Thank you, everyone.